What's up guys, welcome to new Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create a complete GTA game in Unreal Engine 5. This video will cover everything that you will need. You will end up with an advanced character movement using motion matching, a weapon system overlay, advanced police AI, a drivable vehicle, a whole city, NPCs that interact with the player, a wanted system, a phone, a finished short product, and much more. I want to mention that you can download the complete project through Patreon. It's available in the new masterclasses tier. And I'm gonna say that I believe that this is the best looking Unreal Engine 5 tutorial in the whole of YouTube. This just looks straight out of a GTA 6 leak. With that said, it's going to be a very easy video to follow, so let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is create a new Unreal Engine 5 project. In this case, I am going to be using Unreal Engine 5.5, which is the most recent version. It actually came out a few days ago. So with that said, I do recommend that you use the same version as me or above to use the latest features. Alright, so let's go ahead and select the game section and the blank template. Then let's go ahead and make sure that we have blueprint selected and the target platform as desktop. The quality preset will depend on your hardware. In this case, I'm going to leave it as maximum, and then we don't need static content, so we can leave that disabled. Then go ahead and choose a prior location and finally fill in a name. And with that said, let's click on create. Once the new Unreal Engine project opens up, there's one thing that I always like to do, which is go up into Window, Content Browser, and select the first content browser. And then simply drag the tab to the bottom of the screen. That way we have the content browser always anchored and ready to be used. So with that done, it is time to add motion matching into our own project. So let's go ahead and open up the Epic Games Launcher, and on the Epic Games Launcher, on the Fab library, you search for Game Animation Sample, and you should see it over here. Now, if you don't see it, it's because you don't have it on your Fab library, so I will link the Game Animation Sample in the description, and you can simply add it to your library. It's free from Epic Games themselves. Now, before we create a new project, we need to make sure that it's using the latest version of Unreal Engine 5.5. And because the Fab system is still a bit new, we need to do this manually. So we just need to click this arrow and click on remove local content. Once you have done that, just go ahead and make sure to create a new project and specify it to be on 5.5, so it will correctly update to use the latest 5.5 features. So with that said, let's click on create project and let's name this gas_GTA. Select a folder, and then for the version, make sure that you select 5.5. This is very important. Click on create, and now after a few seconds, we should have the project created. So then let's go ahead and search for your project and open it up. And there we go, we have our game animation sample project opened up. And for those that didn't know what the game animation sample is, it's essentially a sample from Epic Games themselves on a very smooth third-person character controller using motion matching. And motion matching is an animation technique which uses a lot of different animations to combine them and create a very realistic movement, as you can see. So we're gonna be taking advantage of this system for our GTA-like game, which is gonna be insane. But before migrating this system into our own project, we need to enable some plugins, otherwise things will break. So let's go ahead and go back into our own project. Alright, so back in our GTA Masterclass project, let's go up into Edit and click on Plugins. And let's go ahead and enable a few of them. So the first one is gonna be Motion Trajectory. Click on this one and click on Yes. We don't mind if it's on Experimental. The next one that we will need will be Pose Search. Let's go ahead and enable this one. Then we will need Motion Warping. Let's go ahead and enable this one. Yes, we know it's in beta, but we want to use it. And then also we want to enable Animation Warping, so click on this. Next, we want the Chooser. Let's go ahead and enable this one. And then we're gonna need the Animation Locomotion Library. Once again, click on Yes. And last but not least, we are gonna have the Deformer Graph, which is already enabled, so we're good to go. Click on Restart Now, so all of the plugins will be updated. And there we go, the project has restarted, and now we have all of the necessary plugins enabled in our project. So let's go back into our game animation sample project. And right over here, let's go into the content browser and open up the blueprints folder. And as you can see, we have the CBP sandbox character blueprint, and this is essentially the player character blueprint, and it's the thing that we need to migrate. So let's right click over this character blueprint, go into asset actions and click on migrate. So migrate is an inbuilt system for Unreal, which allows us to, copy different assets from one project to another, which is amazing. So let's click on this, and as you can see, Unreal Engine will automatically select all of the dependencies and all of the animations, assets, and everything that this character blueprint depends on. That way it's easy for us to migrate. So with all of this by default, let's click on OK. And now let's go ahead and navigate to our own project. So in this case, the GTA Masterclass, double click on content, and in the content folder of our project, let's click on select. And now we just need to wait a couple of seconds, and it will go ahead and successfully migrate all of the animations, animation blueprints, and just blueprints in general that we need. And there we go. So now if we go back to our own project, and I open up the blueprints folder, here it is, as you can see. So let's go ahead and quickly create a game mode so we can go ahead and spawn this character in our level. Let's right click, go to blueprint class, game mode base, GM underscore, and just, single player or whatever you want to call it. Now with that said, let's go to wall settings and just drag the game mode into here, expand this and drag CBP sandbox character into the default pawn class, and boom. And now when I press play, as you can see, we spawn it, but it's a bit broken. As you can see, there are some things that are simply not loading. This is simply because we need to wait for some, shaders to compile. So let's go ahead and exit and just patiently wait until this loads. And so there we go, everything compiled. So now when I press play, I have the animations back to normal. So there we go, everything is gone ahead and working. We have motion matching in our project. So with that done, I want to slightly edit this character, movement. In this case, as you can see, it has a strafe pose, but I only want that when we are aiming, not when we are in a free locomotion, just like in GTA. So let's go ahead and open up the blueprints folder and open up CBP sandbox character, which is going to remind you is essentially the third person character blueprint of motion matching. So with that said, let's go ahead and scroll down into the event graph, and right over here we will see the strafe button. First of all, let's go ahead and hold Alt and click on it to break the connection. That way we can go ahead and toggle strafe on or off. And then I'm gonna go ahead and select this character input state. As you can see, it's a nice variable which essentially has some, different movement types. In this case, we have strafing enabled by default. Let's go ahead and disable this, compile, save. Now when I press play, we have a free locomotion. As you can see, my character now faces the camera, right? The direction that is going, just like in GTA. So that's gone ahead and working, which is great. Now there's one last thing that I want to change, which is the camera. So let's go under the variable section, and as you can see, we have a camera style variable. Over here, instead of balanced, let's go ahead and put this on close. Compile, save, and now this will be closer, just like in GTA. It's not a bit of a difference, but it does get closer to that vibe that we're looking for. With that done, it is time to import the pistol animations that we will add on top of our character when we are, equipping a pistol or something similar. So let's go into the characters folder, right click and create a new folder, and let's call this something as shooter. So we know that we will have all of our weapon, fire ranged animations in this folder. So everything is nice and organized. Then let's right click and create another subfolder, and this will be pistol. So we have everything in different weapon categories. And now with that said, I'm gonna simply leave these 3 animations in the description. You can just download them for free. They're basically from Lyra, which is another Epic Games sample. So let's drag these ones into the content browser, and you can see that we have this new import content in Unreal Engine 5.5. Now it's a bit more complex, but simply scroll down and under skeleton, make sure to search for UFN and select this. And that's it. We can leave everything as default. Make sure that you have import only animations enabled, and I'll click on import. And boom, we have the 3 animations. Now, as you can see, I already retitled them to the, UFN skeleton, which is essentially the motion matching. That's why we needed to import it with the UFN skeleton, so we can use them with motion matching directly. So let's go ahead and Ctrl-Shift-S to save everything, and we also need to go ahead and save the level. So let's go into the content folder, right click and create a new folder, and let's call this levels. And right over here, let's double click to open this up, and let's put this to be as the testing level. And there we go. So now we have these 3 animations imported, so we can start to use them in our locomotion. Alright, so to begin to add and implement these animations into our motion matching system, let's go to the content folder, blueprints, and open up ABP Sandbox Character, which is the animation blueprint of motion matching. So let's go into the name graph where we can see all the different states, and right over here, kind of before, there we go, the default slot, which is right in this section, we want to split it. This is because we want to add the overlay of our weapons on the top part of our character, and also have some states so we can, have the pistol equipped or unequipped, and also open the opportunity to add more weapons into the game if you want to. So let's go ahead and select everything from slot default to the right and move it to the right. Kind of this. And now let's go ahead and hold Alt and click to break the connection, and now simply drag from here, right, from the apply mesh space additive. And let's go ahead and search for cache and add a new cache pose. And let's go ahead and name this locomotion. Now this is essentially saving all of our current animation on what we can call a little variable. Therefore, we can call this variable at any time and select the current state of our animation. So as you can see, when I compiled, it kind of broke the animation because nothing is plugged over here. But if I was to search for the locomotion cache pose that we used and click on compile, it goes back to normal. Why? Well, simply because we are saving this on a variable, let's say, and then using this variable to continue on. Of course, it's not exactly a variable, but I just use that term because it's easier to understand. So, of course, we don't simply want to plug this over here. We want to go ahead and have states. So it is time to create a state machine and have different states for unarmed or with a pistol or whatever weapons you want to add. So in our gap, let's right click and search for state machine, and let's create a new state machine. Let's call this weapon locomotions, and simply make sure to delete this locomotion cache that I added and plug this into the default slot. Okay, if I compile, everything breaks, but let's go ahead and open up this state machine. So the state machine is essentially just the usual states that we use in any animation blueprint in Unreal, as we did with Mannequin many times, right, in the third person template or whatever you want. So over here, let's go ahead and create 2 different states. Let's drag here, add state, and let's go ahead and call this unarmed. With that said, let's drag from here and add another state, and this will be, for example, pistol. There we go. So essentially, if you want to add more weapons, you can just add more states and just join them together. With that said, we also need one transition from pistol back to unarmed, and there we go. So essentially, unarmed will be kind of the default one. So with that said, let's double click on unarmed and let's put whatever animation we want to display over here. In this case, it's going to be very simple. We simply want to use our locomotion cache pose, which is the little, variable that saves our current animation. Therefore, we can use our whole kind of an end graph inside of the state machine, which is super cool, right? So with that said, we have the unarmed working and everything is just back to normal. This is because the state is active by default. But what if we want to go to the pistol? Well, in this case, we want to double click on this and add some pistol animations on top of our locomotion. So to do this, what we can do is right click and search for locomotion, and we can use the cache pose. And then over here, we can simply use a very handy node, which will enable us to split the body in two. So this is going to be the layered blend per bone. So with this node, we can essentially specify a little bone in our hierarchy or in our skeleton, and it will simply kind of split it from there. So let's go ahead and expand layer setup and index and add 2 bones. So if I go into the skeleton with this button, you can see the whole hierarchy, and we could say, okay, let's, split the body from spine 2 or spine 5, whatever you want, and from here onwards, we will play the pistol animations, which is essentially the upper body. But this would not look very, very good, because motion matching does have some cool animations for the torso and the head, and it will simply just be overridden and they will not play. So what we can do instead is purely only play the pistol animations on both arms. So from the clavicle L to the clavicle R. So let's close this, go back here and type clavicle underscore L, and then on this one, clavicle underscore R. Now make sure that you type them exactly like this, otherwise things will break. It will simply not detect the bone. What I recommend to do is actually to go and open up the skeleton, click on the clavicle L, for example, and copy the bone name in the details panel. Okay, this is the best idea, but whatever, just make sure that you have them exactly like this. Then we need to also make sure that mesh space rotation blend is enabled, so the orientation of our gun will be correct, okay, because otherwise it will get the rotation of our pelvis instead of the gun rotation, and it will just mess things up. With that said, let's plug this to the result, compile, and as you can see, nothing really happens because we don't have anything on the blend pose, and the blend pose is essentially the upper body, essentially the pistol animations. So what we can do is simply find our pistol animations. So in asset browser, I can just search for pistol and get the pistol idle, and over here just plug this and make sure with the pistol idle selected on the details panel that you scroll down and enable loop animation. This is very, very important. With that said, when I compile and save, nothing happens. Why? Well, because I'm still in the unarmed, state. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can change from one state to another. So what we're going to do is create a nice variable where we can select what type of weapon we have equipped at this moment. For this, we're going to be using an enumerator. So let's go back to our level, and in the content browser, let's enter in blueprints, right click, new folder, and call this weapons. Right over here, let's right click and go into the blueprint section and create an enumeration. Over here, let's click, or just rename this to E underscore and then weapons. And an enumeration is essentially just a list. So in this case, we can add the unarmed and then also the pistol. And that's it. We can add as many weapons as we want as strings in this list over here, which is really cool. So that means that back in our animation blueprint, I can go into the variable section and create a new variable and call this equipped weapon, and simply set the variable type to be E underscore weapons. And that's it. When I compile, I can go ahead and select this, scroll down, and simply with a little drop down select if I'm on unarmed or pistol, which is really cool. Now of course, still if I change this, it would do nothing because it's not connected to the flow. But what I can simply do is open up this transition, which is from unarmed to pistol. As you can see, the arrow is the top one. So if I'll double click this and drag the equipped weapon, I can simply drag and say equal equal, alright, and then say equal enum, and simply select this to be pistol. So if my equipped weapon is pistol, I simply go ahead and transition into pistol, and then we need to do the opposite. So this is gonna be the button, you know, transition, and this will be if it's equal enum to unarmed, right? I want to go back if it's unarmed. So plug this here. I'm gonna go out and select the equipped weapon to be pistol. Boom! We go into our pistol animation, which is really cool. And if I quickly compile, save, and press play, things break. This is because of the map. So we just need to go to File, Recent Levels, and open up Testing, and it fixes the thing. As you can see, we have our pistol animation on top of our motion matching, right? Which is an overlay. So we still can play all of the other cool animations and just put the pistol on the upper body. This is just genius. We can add as many overlays as we want, and we don't need to, you know, replace every single like walk animation with a pistol walk animation. That wouldn't make sense. So as you can see, it's super easy to go ahead and add this stuff, but we want to do one more thing, which is to be able to aim. So let's go ahead and make sure to create a new variable over here, and this will be something as is aiming. Let's go ahead and put a question mark over there, and now what we can do is double click the pistol, you know, state over here. So depending if we are aiming or not, we want to play a different, you know, kind of pistol idle animation. So first of all, make sure that the is aiming is a boolean, and this will be, you know, true or false. And then there's a very nice node, which is the blend poses by bool. So over here, for the upper body, I can add this node, and with this node, I can simply say, okay, if we are aiming, play this animation, and if we are not aiming, play this other animation. So first of all, this pistol idle is actually incorrect. This we need to go to the false. So holding left control, just move this into false, and then search once again in the asset browser the pistol aim, drag it, and plug it into true. Now make sure that pistol aim in the details panel has loop animation to true. Very important. Also, if you don't see asset browser, you can just find it under window and here, asset browser, okay? So with that said, let's go ahead and drag is aiming and plug it into here. So depending if we're aiming, it will play a different pistol animation. And we can test this. If I click on aiming and enable this, boom, we go into an aiming position. If I disable this, we go back to normal, so everything is gonna head and working. Now let's change a bit the blend times. So when we go from, you know, stationary to aiming, let's put this at 0.2, and then from aiming back to normal, let's put it as 0.23. It's gonna be a bit smoother. All right, so with that said, we just need to make sure that if we are aiming, we aim, and if we are not aiming, we don't aim. What I mean with this is if we actually like click the, you know, button to aim, right? So over here, let's go to the event graph, and as you can see, we can literally execute code as blueprints in the animation, you know, graph, right? So over here, what I can do is simply, before I update all of these variables for motion matching, is add a sequence node. That sequence node will allow me to execute, you know, more pins from one little node, which is quite cool. So let's go ahead and get this information. So what we can do is simply go and find the sandbox character, which is under references in variables, and just drag it, and then say get character input state, which is that variable that we kind of played around with at the beginning. Now let's simply just right click and split this struct, and we have access to all the you know, the individual states. So then we can simply get is aiming, drag it, set, connect to then one, and put in aim. So that way we are checking if our character is aiming, and if we're aiming, we will simply update this variable or not. So if I do this, as you can see, when I aim, it does work perfectly fine, as you can see, which is super cool. So with that said, we have the whole weapon locomotion done, which is amazing. Now you might notice that when we aim with the right mouse button, we actually don't like zoom the camera in or anything like that, and that's because we are missing a very important class that didn't automatically migrate from our motion matching sample. Let's go back to our motion matching sample, and right over here let's go into world settings. If you don't see world settings, go up into window and open up world settings, and then simply under game mode just expand this drop down and you can see the player controller class. Just go ahead and make sure to click on the browse button and we can see this asset. Just right click, asset actions, and then migrate as we did last time. Now this time we don't need all of this stuff, but simply just enable it by default. Okay, just leave it like this, click on OK, and now on our folder, which is our own project content, click on yes, and then click on apply to all and click on no. So it will not go ahead and override anything, just simply add the new player controller. This is very important, make sure that you don't set no override, otherwise you're gonna lose the progress, right? And there we go. If we go back to our GTA master class, I can go to the player controller class and select PC Sandbox. Remember that this is under world settings in our new game mode that we created, which is GM single player. So using the player controller class, select PC Sandbox. It might take some time to load in. Now we have a missing kind of plugin, so click on enable missing and that's it. Once we have added the player controller class to the game mode, let's go under blueprints, CBP Sandbox character, open this up, and now if we go up in the event possess client, we can see a setup camera custom event. Let's open this up and you can see this kind of get console variable bool value, and depending on the return value we go and do this or this. Essentially we're gonna just skip through this and go directly from the player controller to the activate camera for player controller above. And then if I compile, save, and close, as you can see now, we can actually aim and everything like that, which is super cool. So it's just fixed. Alright, so it's finally time to add weapons into our game. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave this link in the description. It's a simple FPS weapon bundle. It's free, it's on Fab. So just go ahead and add this into your Fab library. Then on the Epic Games library, just go ahead and make sure that you refresh the Fab items, and then let's go ahead and just add this to the project. Search for GTA Masterclass or whatever you named it. Click on show all projects, click on this, and then on the version select 4.27, which is the most recent one that this asset supports. It doesn't matter, it will automatically go ahead and work for 5.5. There we go, close this, and now in our project, if we go to content, we can see the FPS weapon bundle over here. Alright, so we go to the bundle folder, go to weapons, meshes, and open up the SMG11. We have here the Nostalg X, which is the pistol that we're gonna be using. Now I know that this is not a pistol, but we're gonna be using it anyways because it looks really cool, and I mean kind of from the distance it might look like a pistol. You know what I mean? You can change whatever assets you want and find your own pistols if you prefer. But let's go ahead and add this pistol into our character. So to do this, go into characters, UFM mannequin, which is the motion matching character. Go to meshes and open up the skeleton. So over here, let's go ahead and find the hand R, which is the right hand. And once we click on this, we can right click and add a socket. A socket is essentially a location in a bone. So let's add a socket, rename this to be, for example, the pistol. And now what we can do is right click and add a preview asset. And we can go ahead and find our Nostalg X. And there we go, we have it over here. Now, to place a bit easier, what we can do is preview an animation. Therefore, we can go ahead and preview the pistol, kind of aim or idle, whatever you prefer. Pause it and then rotate this 180 and simply place it kind of in position like that, okay? Honestly, I'm gonna do it real quick, kind of like that. You can spend more time if you want, but for me, this looks pretty good. So if I press play, of course, we still don't have it in our hand. This is because we simply added the socket, but not the mesh itself. This is only a preview, as you can see, preview only, so it helps us, you know, to place it in the correct place. So what we need to do is go to the blueprints folder and open up the CVP sandbox character. And on here, let's go to the viewport and let's select the mesh. And let's add a new component, and this will be a skeleton mesh because our pistol is a skeleton mesh. I will talk about this in a second, but of course, if you're using your own pistol and it's a static mesh instead, use a static mesh, right? But in this case, it's gonna be a skeleton mesh. So let's name this pistol, and let's go ahead and make sure that this is gonna be our pistol, which was, how was it called? The nosetalk X. So nosetalk X, which is this one, and then make sure to set the collision to no collision. There we go. So everything is, you know, doesn't overlap. And then the most important part, apart from making it a child, is to go to the parent socket and search for the pistol, and boom, it's on position. Now this parent socket option only appeared because it's a child of mesh. This is very important, so we're gonna attach it, you know, to the socket. And now, yes, when I press play, we have the weapon over here, and it's looking insane. Of course, you can play around more with the, you know, rotations and so on, so it's a bit more accurate, but overall, I think I'm pretty happy with this, which is really, really nice. So there we go. We can go ahead and aim and everything like that, which is cool. So let's go ahead and add one extra thing, which is going to be an aim offset. So if we aim up or down, our character actually, you know, turns and looks up or down. Alright, so in order to add the aim offset, let's go to the blueprints folder and open up our animation blueprint. Right over here, let's go to the anim graph, so we can double click over here, for example, and we can go back into our big gap where we have our state machine and all of this stuff. So basically, we want to override and modify the spine bone, okay, depending if we're looking up or down. And we are gonna be doing this right after the default slot. So let's move this to the left so we have this nice space over here, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this node, which is the component and local to component. So these two nodes will enable me to access this hidden node, which is the transform bone. And now with this node, what I can do is simply change the rotation, location, or scale of a specific bone. So if I select this bone, as you can see, well, this node, you can see that we have a drop down to select the bone to modify. In this case, if I click the skeleton, I want to change, you know, make sure the spine 5, right? I think that's a cool point. So let's select spine 0.5, and then let's make sure that we only see the rotation pin, because of course we don't want to change the location or the, you know, scale of this bone, only the rotation. So under translation, let's go ahead and make sure to click on pin and then click on expose as pin, so we disable it. The same with the scale, click on pin, click again and expose as pin, and you can see it only has the rotation. Then for the rotation mode, we want to change this to be add to existent. This is very important. And now with that said, we can just right click on this and promote to variable, and we can call this the look at value, something like that, right? So better like this actually. There we go. So depending on this value, okay, which is a rotator, of course, it will, you know, make our character look up or down. But of course, how do we implement the logic itself and update this variable? Well, all of this is done once again in the events graph where we can execute code. So back in our update animation, which, you know, is executed every frame, we can go to the sequence and add a new pin. And right over here, we can get, once again, our reference of the sandbox character, get, and then what I can do is simply right click and convert to validated get. And I just want to do this so I only continue if, you know, this is not null. Otherwise, we will have an error. And I actually want to do the same with this other one. So I will not break the flow of the code. And there we go. This is pretty important when making sure that our code will not break. And if you don't know what null means, it's basically if it's empty. So imagine that this executes before we assign this variable and it's empty, we will have an error. So this prevents, you know, the error because it will only continue if it's valid, right? If it's not null, it has a value. So with that said, back in our new pin, right, we need to execute this logic. There's this really cool node, which is the get base aim rotation. Right click, we can split this, you know, rotation, and we get all the individual axes, though the X, Y, and Z. So I simply want to change the axes because they are not correct. They will simply just kinda, if I look up, it will move the character to the right. I don't like that stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the pitch and times this by -1. Simply because we need to invert this, you know, rotation. And then from here I can say make rotator, and holding control I can move this to the X. So actually the X will be nice and good. And now from here I can simply get the look at, drag, set, and connect it to this valid, and then the return value to look at. And that's it. I will simply go ahead and get the pitch of the character, inverse that, and put that as the X row and put it to the variable. And now when I press play, guess what? Boom! We go ahead and have this look at, which is amazing, right? Super cool. Of course, you can add more steps into it. You can make the spine number 3 also turn, so it's a bit more realistic, but you get the idea. We're gonna have a super cool state. So there we go. Now, there's one little thing that I want to also do, which is to only do this if I'm aiming, because if not, we get some weird stuff, as you can see. So I only want to do this when I'm aiming. So right on our anim graph where we have this transform bone that we added and all this stuff, I want to go ahead and make sure that I do a blend poses by bool, which once again, you guessed it, it's essentially, you know, moving the character. Now we can do this over here, but we also have a state machine with specifically the pistol state, which has the blend poses by bool. So what we can do is actually put it over here, and it's gonna be a bit cleaner than if we have it over here. Now it doesn't matter where you put it, it's the same logic at the end of the day, but of course maybe it's cleaner or not. So let's go ahead and get these 3 nodes and just press Ctrl X and plug this back again over here, and then open up weapon locomotion, pistol, and over here where we have the pistol aim, let's go ahead and just plug this over here. And if I compile and press play, as you can get, now we're getting a different thing. Now we are simply moving the arms, not the whole torso, which also looks good, but we want to move everything. So this is why we actually want to do it outside, simply because we will be able to get the whole thing, not only the arms, right, which is an important thing, because over here otherwise we would only do it for everything. Now we could do it outside of here, but we would not get the poses by bool, right, which is the important thing. So back in our here, what we can simply do is, before we add this to the local to component, I can break this, drag, and add a new cache pose, okay? And this new cache pose will be called something as, you know, after montages, because as you might know, the default slot plays montages. So with that said, I'm gonna get all of this and move it more to the right so I have more space. And now with this kind of, you know, cache pose, which I refer to as variables, so it's easier to understand, I can just right click and get the after montages cache pose, and then simply plug this here. But of course, I don't want to do this in any case, only if we're aiming. So right after we do the component to local, I want to do a blend poses by bool, as we have done already before. And now from here, on the files pose, I can just get the after montages and directly plug that in. And then I can get the is aiming and plug that to the get active. So if I press play, if I'm not aiming, it doesn't do anything, but when I aim, it does do the thing, which is super cool. Now make sure to put in some interpolations to be smoother, so 0.2 and 0.3 for example, right? And now when you stop aiming, it will be a bit smoother, as you can see. Way better. So we simply create a new cache and use it here, so we can plug it into the blend poses by bool if we are aiming, right? But if we are not aiming, we're gonna directly get this one and plug it in, right? Simple and straightforward, and we can now also aim, which is amazing. So there we go, we have all that logic done. and executing correctly, which is really cool. Okay, so we have a really cool locomotion going on, but I think it's time to change the character because it's a bit boring. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and import this really cool character that I made, which is essentially Lucia from GTA 6. So yes, I spent some time in Revolution Character Creator 4 recreating her, and I have her here. So for those that want to learn how to create complete characters using Revolution Character Creator 4, I'm going to quickly show you how to create Lucia in this program. Now, this is a totally additional step. It's essentially a bonus for this masterclass. So if you want to skip this part, go ahead, just find when I go back to Unreal, and that's it, it's totally fine. So with that said, I'm going to be using the headshot plugin, and this plugin enables me to add a face image, and it will go ahead and transform that into the face of the character. So in my case, I have this Lucia kind of image from the trailer, and I'm gonna simply just drag it into here. And as you can see, we have this little pop-up where we can go ahead and select the body type. In this case, it will be female, and then we're gonna leave the skin type to be as clean soft. And that's it. Lucia is now a baby, so we can just click on generate. And now we just need to wait a couple of seconds, and we will have Lucia being generated. And boom, there we go. As you can see, I have Lucia generated over here, and we literally have her face, as you can see. Now it's not perfect because we got the shadows, as you can see, of the car and so on, but for this example it will work just fine. So now we can just go to window and open up the content manager, and over here we can go to the template and you simply go to the hair and find a cool hair for Lucia, right, that matches. In this case, there is some hair that we can use. As you can see, we have this one. I like this one. I think this is very similar to what Lucia has, so literally just drag it and there we go. It's literally perfect. And also the hair will hide those imperfections quite a lot, as you can see. Then we pretty much just need to add maybe some eyebrows, because right now these eyebrows are from the image, okay, not from, like, essentially, you know, this over here, the real thing. So I can just add, for example, this one, and then we actually have hair. That makes sense, you know. And then basically it's just the clothing, and thankfully we actually have clothes that is actually pretty much like Lucia. So if I go into the shirts section and I scroll down, boom, we have this Lucia top, which is pretty much like the one in the trailer, the color and everything, right? And then for the pants, there are some pants, but I found this one to work just fine, pretty much like in the trailer. And that's it. That's how we have Lucia in only a couple minutes, which is really cool. And of course, we use the headshot plugin, which saved probably like hours of work, you know. That's the important thing. Now, really, if you want to improve the headshot, what you can do is simply just make sure that the texture that you put in the headshot thing, it's even. So let's say that there's no shadows or anything like that. You can see this part is more shadowy than this one that is having light. So if you go to Photoshop and just make sure that the light is even, you get a super realistic result for sure. So with that said, the process of importing her into Unreal is a bit more complex. We need like a little plugin, so I'm not gonna cover that in this section of the video, but I just want to quickly cover how you can create characters in Revolution and how I created Lucia. So in this case, what I got to do is right click, go to Asset Actions, and migrate her into my project. So I'm gonna try to leave her as an FBX that you can download for free in the description as a bonus for this masterclass, right? But you might have some problems importing her in terms of textures. The whole model and skeleton mesh should be super good, but textures might be an issue. So I'll play around with the export settings and you let me know if you can import her correctly. But in my case, I can do it easy way and just migrate from one project to another. So I'm gonna click on migrate, click OK, and then in my project, which is GTA Masterclass, go to content and click on select. And then just wait a bit and I should have her in my project, which is over here. And there we go, Lucia is basically here. If I drag her, there we go. It looks insane, as you can see. It's literally Lucia from GTA 6. I mean, how cool is that, right? So of course, I want to replace her with my current character. So how can we do this? Well, there's a thing called real-time retargeting, which means that at runtime, I can essentially copy the animations from my original character, which is the motion matching character, and paste them into my Lucia character while we play the game, which is super cool. It's kind of a new thing that has been already some time, I would say since 5.2, something like that. So let's go ahead and use this right now. So super simple. The only thing I need to do is first of all create a retargeter. So we can do this going into the characters folder, go to UFN mannequin, which is my motion matching character, go to animations and literally find any animation. Okay, so for example the idol, I can just get this one, right click, and I'm gonna go ahead and just click on retarget animations. So this window pops up, okay, and it doesn't matter what animation I do because I'm not interested in the actual animation, it's just the retargeter as a whole. So I'm showing this so you can replicate this to whatever character you want. Of course, I'm using Lucia. I'm gonna try to leave her in the description as well, but otherwise you can go ahead and try this with whatever character you want. So for my source, it's gonna be the UFN, but for the target, it's gonna be, of course, Lucia. And then I'm gonna go ahead and not select any animation, just click on export retargeted asset. And then I'm gonna go ahead and find the Lucia folder, and then right click, create new folder, retargeter, and click on export. Close this, and now as you can see we have these 3 new assets. So let me go ahead and rename this over here to RTG UFN underscore 2 underscore Lucia. So I know that this is the retard that I want, and I'm gonna retard this to be IK underscore Lucia, and this I can like this. So essentially what it did was create this IK rigs for both characters, which is creating some bone chains. So for example, for the head, it created a bow chain for the head and the head. For the left arm, from the upper arm to the hand left. All these things, right? So it's just making sure that things are on chains. So then in the retargeter, I can use this to join chains together. For example, the spine matches the spine of the Lucia character. And then in the asset browser, I can play any animation, for example, the idol, and it will just sync correctly, which is super cool. As you can see, it looks like I'm inside of GTA 6, Rockstar Games or something like that right now, right? So with that said, we just need to use this, IK retargeter at real time. So to do this, let's go to content, blueprints, and you can see that we have a folder called retargeted characters. So what I'm going to do is just select this mannequin, duplicate it, and rename it to, of course, be CVP underscore Lucia. Open this up, and I'll go ahead and change this mannequin character with Lucia. Now there's another way to do this, which is just going directly to the CVP sandbox character, right clicking and creating a child. But of course, these are already childs created by Epic Games, and they already have added, the additional skeleton mesh, so it's easier for me to change it real quick, So I recommend going through this route, which is duplicating the, one of the retarded characters as an example. Now, if you don't see this folder or whatever, just make sure to go back to the game animation sample project, right click on one of those characters, and then migrate it into our project, and you should have them, okay? So with that said, let's select Manny here, and let me rename this to Lucia. Then I'm gonna go to the skeleton mesh asset and replace her with Lucia, compile save, and then I'm gonna close and open this back again so it refreshes, and there we go. Now it's a bit broken. This is because we are using the mannequin retargeter, not the Lucia retargeter that I just built. So as you can see, we have this anim class, which is this generic retarget. This is a universal animation blueprint which uses this IK retargeter map to retarget all of our characters. So the only thing we need to do is go over here and add our retargeter to the list. So click on add, scroll down and search for Lucia, and then Lucia. Okay, so you can name it whatever you want. In my case, I'm gonna just put Lucia. And again, this is under the IQ retargeted map, which is a variable in the generic retargeted kind of asset. With that, I can compile, go back here, and under Lucia, I can search for a tag, and simply replace this with Lucia. And boom, this is essentially the name of this tag over here. So this needs to match perfectly. I recommend, copying and pasting. And with that said, we're good to go. Lucia is now on the game. Now, when I press play, we don't see Lucia. Why? Well, we are spawning the parent character, not Lucia. So let's go to WoW settings. And now under the game mode, in default pawn class, I can drag Lucia to the sandbox character. And now, yes, when I press play, boom, we have Lucia over here, which looks insane, as you can see. Wow, this is actually pretty cool. And we did this in 2 minutes, and all the animations are matching perfectly the skeleton mesh. So that's it, we have Lucia now in game. And you can replicate that with Lucia as well, if you get it working, or with any character that you want. Alright, so now it is time to make our character be able to shoot, because right now when I press the left mouse button, nothing happens. I can only aim, and that's it. So let's go into the blueprints folder and open up our weapons subfolder. And on here, let's right click and create a new blueprint class. And this is gonna be an actor component. An actor component is a separate class that I can attach as a component to any blueprint actor. This means that we can have the code, in a modular way, which is gonna be way better to organize. You will see this better when I go ahead and implement this. So select actor component and name this BPC for, blueprint component underscore, and then let's name this shooter, which is essentially going to be the whole kind of, shooting logic and all that stuff. So first of all, we are going to go ahead and add this new component into our character blueprint so we don't forget. So let's go to blueprints and open up CVP sandbox character. Now remember, even though we went ahead and created the Lucia, child actor, we still need to apply all the main logic in the sandbox character, which is the parent. So all the other characters, including Lucia, will already have it, right? Which is very important. So under components, search for shooter and add it. Press enter, and that's it. We have the component and close. So the first thing I want to do in the shooter component is get a reference to, well, the sandbox character. So let's right click over here and say get owner. And with this node, I can access the, owner of this component. In this case, we know for a fact that it's gonna be the CBP sandbox character. So select sandbox character and plug it here as a cast, right? We literally added this component to this blueprint, so the owner we know is going to be this 100%. So with that said, let's right click and promote this to a variable and name this the character BP, as we're gonna save the character as a variable. And there we go. So now it's time to be able to shoot. So let's create a new input action for our left mouse button. So under content, open up the input folder, and on here just right click, go to the input section and create a new input action. Let's go ahead and name this to IA underscore fire. And now we don't need to even open this. We can just go to the IMC sandbox, which is the input collection. And on here we can add this new input, which is gonna be the fire. And then expand this, and right over here we can click this and then click the left mouse button in our mouse, and therefore it will add it automatically as a shortcut. You could also go ahead and search it manually, but it's easier like that. So save, close, and now we can literally use it. So if I type IA underscore fire, I can use the enhance action events, the first one with the arrow, expand it, and there we go. We have full control with this. And because this component is added to the sandbox character, this means that, well, I can go ahead and also execute input, which is really nice. So with that said, let's add a new variable to control what weapon we currently have equipped, because this is going to be important, So let's name this equipped weapon. And as you might remember, we already have a e-weapons class, which consists of all the weapons. So by default, let's set this to pistol, as we did in the animation blueprint, because I want to start with the pistol used for the video. And then what we can do is get this new variable and drag and use this switch on e-weapons node. So depending on my current weapon, I can execute this logic or this logic. In this case, I'm gonna plug that to started. So when we start pressing the key, I want to check this before I fire. So if we have the pistol and we are not unarmed, so only we have the pistol, we want to go ahead and fire. So first of all, let's add a new branch and right click and make a new variable, and this way we can fire. So if we can fire, we can continue, otherwise we can't. Now make sure to compile, select this variable and mark this as true. Very, very important. Make sure that campfire is enabled by default, on the class itself. Now with that said, we can go ahead and continue. So for example, we would create a new custom event with fire, and we would execute all the logic here, and we can just call fire here. Okay, so we will fill in all of the actual firing logic in a second, but first we would go ahead and set campfire to be disabled, so we cannot fire again, right? Because we just fired, and then we can add a little delay of a couple of seconds, maybe like 0.18, something like that, nearly 0.2, right? And then set this to true. Now we could do this a bit more precisely with some name notifies, which are some specific frames in our animation for firing and so on, but this is a nice shortcut which just makes our lives easier, honestly. So let's use this for now. So then we have this custom event which will actually go ahead and play the actual logic. Let's go ahead and fill this in. Okay, so now in our shooter component, we want to actually introduce the firing logic itself. We made that when we press the fire input, which is the left mouse button, we check if we have a pistol. If so, we check if we can fire, and we then execute this over here, right? So now we actually need the logic itself. So first of all, let's go ahead and drag this and make a simple sphere trace by channel. So a sphere trace by channel is essentially an invisible sphere that goes from one point to another, and this has a certain radius. If it goes ahead and detects something, we can deal damage and so on. So this will be essentially the bullet itself, right? So let's go ahead and add the start and end point for this kind of bullet. Let's go ahead and get the character BP, and from there we can get the pistol, right? Because we want to shoot from the pistol, and then scroll down and get the component itself. And now the cool thing about this pistol that we added using this asset pack is that it is a skeleton mesh, which means that I can get a socket transform, or in this case just location. And this means that I can get a certain position on the pistol. So let me just rephrase this for a second. If I go to the blueprints folder and open up my character blueprint, you can see that this Glock, right, or this pistol, whatever it is, right, is a skeleton mesh. But if I open up the skeleton mesh asset itself, we have a whole skeletal, kind of hierarchy. And guess what? We have a specific point over here, which is B-gun muzzle flash, which is at the tip of the gun where we can spawn our bullet. Otherwise, the thing will be spawned over here, but we want our bullet to be spawned precisely here. So select this, go to details, copy this name, go back to shooter, and paste this. And now we will be getting this specific location to spawn it. And now put this to start. And now we get also the endpoint, right? So what we can do is get the camera manager, because we want to know where the camera is aiming, right? And then simply get the camera rotation, if I know how to type. There we go. And then we can just get the forward vector, so we get the direction that we're aiming. And now we can simply multiply this, right click by a float, and this will essentially be the distance. So how far away will this bullet go? Let's put in like 3000, but of course you can play around with that. Now from the cycle location, let's add an add node, put this here, and this will be our endpoint. So we also have the direction here. Now for the radius, let's go ahead and put something as 30, but of course you can play around with that. Visibility is gonna be the trace channel, and then that's pretty much it. And actually I just realized, instead of using a sphere trace by channel, it's gonna be better if we use a sphere trace for objects. The difference is that this node will detect objects by their trace channel in the collision settings, and this node will detect objects by the object type itself. There might be a pawn or whatever. So what I'm going to do is move this down, hold Control, and start to move things here. Here, 30, and boom, we completely replace the node in 2 seconds. Make sure that you plug it in correctly, start to here, the end to here, and so on, right? And the fill in the radius to here. So let's put this for duration for like, 1 second, so we can preview it once we press play. But we have a very important step, which is to, make sure that we select the object types that we want to collide with. So let's make an array and set pawns, because we only want to go ahead and detect pawns. And pawns in Unreal are essentially characters. So for example, the police, civilians or other players or whatever you want to have, right? So with that said, we can just add a branch over here. So we will only continue if we actually hit something, so things don't break. And then here we have a whole struct. So if I break this, we have all the values about, whatever we collided with, right? So what I can do is literally get the hit actor, which is the, character that I, hit with a bullet, and then simply use this node in Unreal, which is the applied damage. So yes, Unreal has a type of, damage system implemented with interfaces. Of course, it will not still, take damage from a variable and then, kill a character. We will need to implement that, but we have the whole connection as an interface, which is really cool. So this will be the base damage, which is the bullet damage. So let's right click, promote this to variable. This will be the, bullet damage. Now in my case, I'm gonna use compile and put this to be around, I don't know, just 10 for now, as a random value. But of course you can play around with this variable, and of course you will need to change this variable depending if you have, the pistol or rifle, and you want to have different values between them, right? In my case, I'm gonna just make one universal, so it's easier for the purpose of the tutorial, if that makes sense. And that's it. So there we go. We go ahead and have this thing going on. So actually we can test this out. If I press play and shoot, we have this sphere from the tip of the gun just forward. So I could go ahead and hit stuff. And actually this super precise is getting the direction of the camera, so it's gonna always impact, the position that we want for our player, which is super important, as you might, imagine. Now it's time to actually, do some things. For example, play some muzzle flashes and also some sounds, right? So we actually get the full, realistic sense of this kind of gun. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So for the muzzle flashes, we're gonna be using this pack, which is the Infinity Blade FX. It's a OG, effects from Epic Games themselves. It's totally free. So the thing is that I'm not sure if this got migrated to the Fab Marketplace. So if it didn't, I'm gonna leave an alternative, kind of effects pack that you can go ahead and import. So don't worry, okay? So with that said, let's go ahead and import this to the project, and then make sure to show all projects so we can see it, and then select the latest compatible version, which is 5.4. Don't worry, it will work anyways. Let's go ahead and click on add to project, and boom, it did already import. So if I go back to here, you can see that we have this Infinity Blade Effects folder with all the things. So it is time to, just spawn this muzzle flash. It's gonna be super simple. So I'm gonna go ahead and go up into the apply damage. So right after we apply damage, I'm gonna just say, actually, it makes more sense to do it separately, right? Because maybe we didn't hit anything and we want to play the muzzle flash, so it wouldn't make sense to put it over there. So what I'm gonna do is kind of put this over here and add a sequence. This sequence will allow me to play, as we did in the animation blueprint, more logic from one node, which is really cool. So what I can do is literally use this spawn emitter at location, actually attached. So if we move around, the muzzle flash looks good. All right, so now in this node, I can search for the muzzle flash. We have two. It's gonna be the backpack, and then I'm gonna go ahead and attach this to the gun. So I'm gonna get the pistol, scroll down, plug it over here, and of course the attach point will be the specific muzzle flash socket. So paste this like that. Now we simply just need to edit the location. So I'm gonna copy this location again, paste this here, and then I'm gonna simply just go ahead and plug the location. And actually I'm gonna need the whole transform. Okay, it's gonna be a socket transform, which is here. Right click and split. So now I have location, rotation, and scale. This means that this will go here, but then for the rotation I can split it, right click and split it, and I can edit a bit because the rotation is a bit broken if we spawn it directly like this. So the X and Y is okay, but for the Z we just simply need to add 90 degrees, so it'll be in the correct orientation. Then the scale will be 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, otherwise it's going to be huge. And then we can leave this as keep relative offset, and the pulling method as auto release. And now, yes, we can see when I press play, remember to load in the map. Okay, I'm testing. Actually, let's fix this right now, because if you close the level, you need to reload the level. So we go to project settings, we go to maps and modes. We're gonna set the editor start map to be testing. Okay, that way that will be fixed. All right, so now I press play and I shoot. Okay, the muzzle flash is not in the correct place because we need to change one setting, which is, so we don't need, okay, so yeah, so the offset is better if we don't add any name. Leave it like this. Sorry, actually, yeah, so this is a, you just need to click on reset because otherwise there's actually going to be a little gap. So if I spawn this, as you can see, still doesn't spawn in the correct location because the socket is this one, not this one. Okay, so you play around with this. You can see that we're getting different results. For example, to the component, there we go, and you can see now the component will work just fine, right? So that's the thing. You just need to play with the little, you know, transform space, and that's it. We have it like this, which works just fine. So now it's time to add, you know, some sounds. So it's actually going to be kind of full immersive and also some kind of shake. All right, so let's go ahead and import the fire sound. So first of all, let's go ahead and open up the audio folder, and right over here let's create a new folder and call this something as weapons, so everything is nice and organized. So over here I will go ahead and link, like, once again, this fire sound. Just download it and drag it into the content browser, and that's it. It sounds great. So the thing is that if we play this repeatedly, it will sound very arcadey. It will not look good because the sound is going to be the same. So what we can do is every time that we play it, slightly change the pitch. Therefore, we get an illusion that's a different sound. Let's right click, create a audio meta sound, and let's call this ms_fire. Right over here, let's go ahead and drag this and say play wave player 1.0 mono, and search the fire over here. Then the output will be mono, and the unfinished will be unfinished. And now it will be the same, right? But if we go ahead and get this value, which is the pitch, we can use random float, plug this here, and put this to be like -2 and 2, right? A little rule range. And now it changes every time, which is really cool. Now we still have one little thing left, which is to make it play in 3D. So let's go to audio, right click audio, and create a sound attenuation. This will enable us to make it 3D. Let's call this character because it will be generic. And actually, I just forgot. We actually already have a sound attenuation for the character with motion matching. So we click on source. I can go into attenuation, and yes, we don't have it. Okay, so it seems okay. So yeah, when we migrated it, we didn't migrate the sound attenuation. But let's just, you know, right click and create our own one. It's okay. So name this character as we were doing, and we can set some properties. So first of all, this has to be natural sound. The inner radius will be like 200, and the maximum we can leave it as, you know, 4,000, as, you know, the pistol has to sound like very, very, very strong, right? With that said, we are good to go. We just need to go back to the source and use character. Cool. So now this will play in 3D. So let's go ahead and open up the BPC shooter. And right over here, let's drag and say play sound at location, because this has to be spawned in 3D. So what we can do now is simply get the location of the socket and spawn that as the location. And then over here, we can search for ms_fire. And that's it. We don't need to specify an attenuation because we already did on the meta sound asset itself. And now if I press play and shoot, as you can see, it sounds amazing. Let's also go ahead and go to the sphere trace for objects node and disable the debug type. So you set it to none, and now we have the pistol in its full glory, which is amazing. This is so cool, as you can see. And last thing that we want to add as feedback for the pistol is gonna be a little camera shake. So let's go to blueprints, weapons, and right over here let's right click and create a new blueprint class. Let's expand all classes and search for camera shake. And if we scroll down, we can see the legacy camera shake class. Select this and call this BP underscore camera shake underscore fire. And with that said, let's go ahead and fill in the values over here. So first of all, for the oscillation duration, let's put this to be 0.15. So it's very quick. Let's leave everything by default. Then let's go ahead and open up the rotation oscillation and let's expand pitch, yaw, and roll. So for the amplitude of pitch, let's put it at 2 and 5. The same for the amplitude of yaw, 2 and 5, and the same for roll. Okay, that's gonna be the same one for everyone. But then for the roll, we want to be instead of random to 0. Okay, so it doesn't go ahead and begin from a random point, so it looks natural. And with that said, we can literally just go and open up the BPC shooter, and right after we play the sound, we can do a play world camera shake. Then just go ahead and fill in this fire one that we just created, and then of course the epicenter will be one more time this, location from the muzzle flash. The inner radius will be 0, the outer radius will be like 4,000, right? So it, I mean, it's a whole kind of pistol shooting, this would be from a distance. And now, as you can see, we have a little camera shake, which adds so much. And of course, you can go ahead and play around with the values to get exactly what you want. Alright, so now it is time to begin with our health system. So, we don't really have now a threat like an police AI to test this, but let's leave everything created for then. Later on when we create the police AI, we can just integrate it super easy and just say plug and play. Let's go ahead and open up the blueprints folder, and right over here let's right click and create a new blueprint class. Once again, we're gonna go ahead and create an actor component as we did with the shooter component, because it's gonna be very easy to add this component to any actor. The thing is that both of these components that we were building will also work with our police AI later on, which is a complete different blueprint. This is why actor components are so cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and select this, call this BPC underscore and health, something like that. Open this up and let's get started. So the first thing that I want to do is get once again a reference to the player. So we can get the owner and then cast to the CBP sandbox scatter. Remember, it's not Lucia, it's always going to be the parent, which is sandbox scatter, okay? And then I can right click, save this as a character BP. And then with that said, we are good to go. Now let's go ahead and also open up the CBP sandbox character and add this health BPC. So, we don't forget later on and we're like, oh, it doesn't work. And well, it's because we don't add the component, right? So this is good practice when you create actor components to add them, as soon as you can. Anyway, with that said, we already implemented the interface of apply damage, as you might remember on our shooter, right? We have this apply damage. So, as you might guess, we also have a receive damage thing. Now, we cannot access this directly on the component because it's not a, whole actor. It doesn't have a 3D kind of rendering, so we cannot access that component. But we can through the player, which is the owner. So what we can do is simply get this and do a bind event to untake any damage. Connect this and create a new custom event, which will be take damage. And now, as you can see, we have all the properties that we will receive. We can actually put it here, it's been organized from, when we receive damage, so the health and all this stuff. So let's create a new variable called this health. And this is gonna be a float, of course. Let's compile and set this default value to be 100. Very important. And now we can get the health and decrease it from our incoming damage. And then I can drag the health and set it to be updated, as you can see. There we go. So therefore, when I receive damage from the player in this component, I'll receive it, I bind it into it, and then of course do the calculation to reduce the health. Then I want to check if we died or not, right? It's going to be very straightforward. So if the health is lower or equal to 0, that means that we need to ragdoll into the floor and also disable some movements and so on. So let's get the character BP and simply do a disable movement. It will automatically go ahead and get the character movement component that we need. And there we go. So our player will not be able to move, of course, when we die. It makes sense, right? Then for our simulate physics, well, we need to ragdoll our character. So what we can do is from here, get the mesh. Now make sure it's the print once again, and then do a set simulate physics. This node will enable us to ragdoll. So make sure that simulate is on, very important, and that's it. Let's go ahead and also create a variable which is dead, right? And put this to be true. And boom, there we go. Now, there's one thing that we need to do for the ragdolling, because by default, it would just bug out. The motion matching character by default has a strange ragdoll setup, I'm not gonna lie. So let's go real quick to the blueprints and open up CBP Sandbox character. And right over here, let's select the main mesh, right? So mesh over here and scroll down. And on the collision settings, on the collision enabled, we need to change this to collision enabled querying physics. So all the bones will collide with each other, so it actually works. Then we also need to create another physics asset, because the built-in physics asset from this guy over here is kind of broken. So let's go ahead and click on browse, right click, create, physics asset, create. Leave everything by default, just hit create, and that's it. Just rename this to be the UFN physics asset. And there we go. So you can see everything is good for when we ragdoll, which is really cool. So back on here, let's search for physics, and you can see that we have the physics asset upright. Simply search for UFN and apply the one that we created. So we have one which is PA and one which is UFN. Of course, we didn't add PA, so it has to be this one, right? And that's it. We're good to go, and we are ready to ragdoll if we die. Right now, we cannot really ragdoll, but we'll try this in a second because we're gonna do a debug to, apply ourselves damage just to test. Now, there's one little thing that I want to add, which is to make our player not be able to shoot if it's dead. So under the shooter component, right when we press the input action, or even when we fire, whatever you prefer, I'm gonna do it like right over here. I want to check if we are dead or not. So I'm gonna get the catcher component and get the health component, and then I'm gonna say get dead and add a not boolean. So if we are not dead, we can add a branch and continue. That means that we can go ahead and shoot. But if we are dead, because we have the not here, it will simply not go ahead and, execute all this logic. And there you go. Now we cannot test this, even though we added the component and everything, because of course we cannot shoot ourselves right now. But we can do a little thing. I don't know if it will bug things out, but if I drag Lucia to the world, and I start to shoot her after 10 hits, there we go. She ragdolls and dies. Now it's a bit bugged in terms of ragdolling, as you can see, but it's also funny. You can fix this by changing up other characters, UFN, meshes, the physics asset, just the weights and the collisions and all that stuff. But for now I'm gonna leave it like this because the thing is great and super funny, right? So we only need to do one thing, which is to add like a hit react, when we actually get hit. Alright, so let's go and open up the catchers folder and open up our shooter animation with our custom animations. And right over here, let's go ahead and import this hit animation. I'm gonna leave it once again in the description. Just go ahead and make sure that the skeleton is UFN, and that's it. Import everything by default, and we're good. Right click on this and create an animation montage so we can play it at any time. As you can see, it looks really cool, right? So let's go ahead and open up the blueprints folder and open up BPC health. And basically when we receive damage, but we are not dead, we're gonna do this. Actually, we're gonna play every time. Let's just play the hit every time, right? So over here, I'm gonna simply do a sequence, and I'm gonna go ahead and just get the character BP and get the mesh. Once I get the mesh, what I can do is do a play anim montage, which is here, play montage. Plug this here, and then select the, hit montage, which is gonna be this one. And that's it. As you can see, if I add Lucia back again, it plays a little hit, which is kind of cool, right? And with that done, we also need to add the firing animation, right? So let's go ahead and open up the characters folder, shooter, pistol, and as you can see, we have a pistol fire, which looks pretty neat. So let's right click and create an anim montage so we can execute this at any time, basically, right? And I'm gonna make some adjustments. So first of all, the rate scale is gonna be 2, so it's a bit faster. And then I'm gonna change the blend in and blend out so it's smoother during, the gameplay. Well, actually, I think 0.25 will work. I mean, you can play around with those, but I'm gonna leave that later. Okay, so just in the shooter component, right after playing, the camera shake, for example, I can get the character bleepy and get the mesh, and then simply do a play anim montage, right, or montage. And from here, I can select the fire, which is this one. And that's it. I can leave everything by default. So now when I press play and I shoot, I play this animation. Now, the animation itself goes a bit to the right, as you might notice. So this is really playing. If you want to add like a little offset, you can do so. Or change of animations. It's literally from lighter, okay? So you can play around with that, but you get the idea. We have now shooting and everything. Alright, so now it is time to create the phone. So yes, we are gonna have a little phone that you can open and close, where it will display 3 little apps. Now, there's not gonna be an actual functionality or system to the phone. It's purely visual, and then you can go ahead and replace that phone screen with whatever mechanic you want. You can create a whole camera system, or just display, like for example, the player's cache, or add more apps, whatever you want. But in this case, it's gonna be purely just the concept. So with that said, let's go inside of the blueprints folder, and right over here, let's right click and create a new blueprint class. And once again, as we did with the shooter component and the health component, it is going to be an actor component, so everything is nice and organized, and we can add this, functionality to any actor that we want. So actor blueprint, BPC, and then this is gonna be a component, and let's call this just phone. Great. So with that said, let's go ahead and simply make sure that you can open or close the phone. So for that, let's go ahead and create a new input action. So inside of the input folder, let's right click, go into input and create a new input action. And this is gonna be IA_phone. And of course, we don't need to open this up or anything like that. That values by default will work. We just need to go to the collection and add a new mapping. And this will be the phone. Now you can put whatever key you want. In my case, let's put like P for the phone initial, but whatever you want. So with that said, let's delete these 2 things and just right click and add the IA_phone action event, and there we go. And before we continue, let's go ahead and make sure that we add this component into the player blueprint so we don't forget later on. So let's go ahead and open up the blueprints folder and open up CBB sandbox character, and under components, let's search for phone and add BPC phone, compile, save, and close. Nice. So now it is time to create this widget. So in started, let's go ahead and call this create widget. And of course, we will need to create the widget in a second. But from here, we will add this to the player viewport, right? So it's on the player screen. And then we can also just play a little sound 2D. And this can be, open. There we go. This floating UI open. Let's put this at like 0.5 and that'll work. Now, of course, we get an error because we need to assign a specific widget. So let's go real quick to content. And right over here, as you can see, we should have a user interface. Okay, yeah, so we don't have a user interface folder because it did not, migrate automatically from the other you know, project, right? The gas example project. So let's right click and create our own folder and just call this UI. So under this folder, let's right click and create a new user interface, and this will be a widget blueprint. Let's select user widget and name this AUB_phone. Great, so that's it. Let's go ahead and add a canvas panel into the hierarchy. And now we can start to place things on the screen. Now let me compile, save, go back over here so I can add the phone widget and just solve the error. Now additionally, I want to also save this on a variable. So let's go ahead and just break this link, right click and promote this to a variable, and this will be the phone widget. Let's connect this in between and make sure to connect this to the viewport, and there we go. So now, yes, we are saving this phone in a variable. This is simply because we want to later on close it, but also check if we already have the phone opened. How would we do this? Well, you simply get the phone widget, right click and convert this to a validated. And if it's not valid, that means that the phone isn't created. So boom, we will simply create it from here. And if it's valid, that means that the phone is opened. So we can simply get once again the widget and use this remove from parent node. This is the node that will remove any widget. So we can use this to remove the widget from the screen. And also we can go ahead and set this variable to be empty. That way we will continue with the loop, and next time that we open the phone, it will create a new phone, right? And then on top of that, we're gonna also play a little sound. So I'm gonna copy and paste this and find a close, and this one will work. Okay, so we have open and close, which is perfect. So if you don't find the sounds, make sure that you have here show engine and plugin content under the settings. Cool, so with that done, it is time to create the phone widget itself. Let's go ahead and do this. So we are going to need to import some icons. So let's open up the UI folder, and right over here, let's create a new subfolder and call this icons. So as always, I will link some icons in the description. You can just go ahead and get them. And in my case, we want to get this bunch of icons and drag them in, okay? As you can see, we will have 4 icons, one for the phone itself, one for the gallery app, for the phone app, and then also for the weather app, okay? Very straightforward. So let's open up the widget and simply search in the palette for an overlay. An overlay will allow us to place multiple things on top of each other, which will be easier. So let's go ahead and just make sure that the anchor is on this side of the screen, and then the position X and Y is on 0, 0, and then simply put the alignment on Y to 1 and X to 1. As you can see, now we have it perfectly on the corner. With that done, let's drag in an image and make sure that this is expanded. And then under brush, we can search for the phone icon, and boom, we have our phone. Now, of course, it doesn't respect correctly the aspect ratio, so let's go ahead and just expand this overlay. Okay, remember we're modifying the overlay, not the image, and simply put a bit in a different position. And I think this is what I like. Okay, so by hitting the ground or the bottom of the screen, and that's it. So let me just change this to phone, and an overlay, let me just get a grid, because now it is time to add, of course, the little apps. So let's drag in this uniform grid panel, and make sure that this uniform grid panel has this at the center. We can make it expand, but I think the center is going to be good. And then we can get another image and put it over here. And this will be, for example, the weather app, right? So weather, and now we can find our sun, which I don't know if it's named sun. There we go. Indeed, it is. And we can simply go ahead and change the image size. So, for example, to 40 and 40, something like that, or 50-50, whatever you prefer, right? Also, I'm going to change the tint to be kind of this color. And then I'm going to duplicate this. And this is going to be the phone, the calling app, right? Whatever you want to call it. Change this to green. And change the column to be 1. Okay? And that's it. As you can see, we are adding different apps. Now, of course, this has to be the phone. So let's find the phone icon, which is this one called. So let me apply this, and then remember to put this to 40, and 40 has to be exactly the same size. Now in the uniform, let's make sure that on the left we have 15 of padding, so it is organized. Yeah, actually I think 0 will work efficiently. Yeah, okay, this will work. And with that done, we have this over here, so we can also add one last app, which is the gallery. So let's duplicate this, gallery, boom, change this to like blue or something, and then 40 and 40, and there we go. Remember to put the column to 2, and now we have 3 little apps. And now it's simply, you know, time to move around this widget. So really ideally it will be here with some offset on the top, so like we could put like 50 or something, or 100, and you know, we can start to play around with that, but you get the idea. You can play around with all the sizes and so on, but you know, you can customize this as you want. You can add more separation between them or whatever, right? But the important thing is the overlay. So let's create 2 little animations when we open up this phone or not, because right now if I press play and I press P, I have this phone and I close it, but of course it's not looking very good. And also I want to expand this a bit to the left, so let me do this. And now let's go ahead and, you know, make this phone open and close. So let's go ahead and select the overlay component or whatever it's called, and then on the window make sure that you have the animation span opened. So now we can create a new animation. Let's call this, you know, something as open, and if we select this new animation, we can keyframe it. So let's go ahead and get the current position Y and just copy this and go forward and put a keyframe. So at 0.50, add a keyframe. But before, let's go ahead and increase this value so it's hidden and add a keyframe. And now as you can see, boom, it pops up. Now this has to be a bit faster, so let's put this to be around 0.25, and it's way better. Now on here, let's copy once again the position Y, and let's create the close animation. Select close and simply paste this keyframe, and then 0.25, it will be, you know, again hidden, so keyframe. And now, boom, we close it like that. So it's working perfectly, open and close. Also, if we deselect of the animations, we simply see the overlay and make sure that it's back with the position on Y. Nice. So now if we go to the to the phone, we can go to the graph, and what we can simply do is create 2 little custom events. We can create an open phone custom event, and also a close phone custom event. So then we can get the open phone and do a play animation, and then we can also do a close and do a play animation. Now we do this, we can just make sure, yeah, this is plugged in. We can of course change also the start time and the speed and so on, but this will work. And now if I go back and open up BPC phone, what I can do is, for example, when I open the phone, after playing a sound, I can simply do, okay, open phone, and it will play that animation. And then to close the phone, what I can do is go here, paste this, delete this, and change it to close, and plug this before. Now if we do this, the close phone animation will not play. Why? Well, because it will start playing and immediately remove it. So we will need to add a little delay of the duration of the animation, which in this case it was around, let's see, 0.25, and I think it's 0.25. Yeah, 0.25 for both. So 0.25, and that's it. It doesn't have to be, you know, super accurate, because, you know, it's a quick phone UI animation, but you get the idea. Now when I press play, boom, we have this really cool open and close, just like in GTA, which is amazing. Of course you can change the sounds to be what you like, but we have a whole phone, which is really cool. And with that done, it is time to create the wanted system, which is gonna be super cool. We're gonna have little 5 stars at the top right, and depending on our wanted level, they will go ahead and change or not. So once again, let's open up the blueprints folder and right click and create a new blueprint class. And let's create once again a new actor component so everything is nice and organized. Call this bpc_wanted and open this up. So with that said, let's go ahead and delete the event tick, and in the begin play we will create, guess what, a new widget, because of course we need a widget to go ahead and showcase the stars. So before we continue, let's go into the content folder, open up UI, right click, use interface, widget blueprint, user widget, and create a new widget called wb_wanted. Let's go ahead and go back here and add this, it's this one, okay. This one over here, right click, promote variable, and this will be the wanted widget. And now we have, once again, a variable of this widget class, so we can, do anything that we want with, for it. For example, update it or whatever, right? And then also let's go ahead and add this to the viewport, so it will appear, in the player screen and all of this stuff. So now with that said, let's right click and create 2 different custom events. One is going to be increase wanted level, and another one is going to be set wanted level. Okay, so there's going to be 2 ways that we can essentially update the wanted level. So for the set wanted level, let's put in the new wanted level, right? Because this is going to be an integer. It's going to be, okay, what new wanted level we want to set. And in the increase, I guess we could also say, okay, amount, if you want to increase multiple levels at the same time, but usually we want one at a time, right? So let's create a new variable. This will be the wanted level itself, and as you guessed, it's going to be an integer, right? It's going to be a value from 0 to 5. So let's get the wanted level and simply add this number with the incoming amount, right, in the increase, and then we'll set this to be a sum, and that's it. Now for the set wanted level, we'll simply just get it and set it with whatever value is coming in, right? Now of course we need to make sure that these values will be clamped from 0 to 5, so we can use the clamp integer node over here and just put in min 0, max 5, and that's it. Now let's do the same with this one, right? And there we go, we're just making sure that it will be always in range for our UI, right, essentially. So now with that said, we just need to make sure that our widget will update. So for this, let's open up the wanted and add a new canvas panel to hierarchy as we did with the phone, and now we can place things, right? So this is going to be super easy. We're going to essentially just add in horizontal box and change the angle to be at the bottom right, and then simply place this around this. It doesn't need to be exact, and then let's drag in some images. So it will be, for example, the star 1 and so on. But before we carry on, let's actually go ahead and import these stars. So once again, I will basically link the icon, and we can just drag it into the icons folder. Boom, and there we have it. So now we go here, I can just assign it, and there we go. Just make sure that now we just duplicate this, and this will be star 2, duplicate this, star 3, duplicate this, star 4, and duplicate this so it's star 5, and that's it. Now we need to make sure to select all of them and set fill, so they will essentially just all go inside of the horizontal box. And then in padding, let's add for left 15, so they're nice and neat. And there you go. I think that's actually a perfect size. So we have here our little stars in the horizontal box. So now it is time to make them update. So first of all, let's make sure that by default they are disabled. What do I mean with this? Well, essentially just not active for the player. So we can achieve this effect by simply changing the color and opacity to be like 0.3 on the alpha. That way the player will instantly know that, well, they are not active, right? We don't have a current wanted level because it's kind of hidden. So in the we press play, nothing happens because we also need to open up the CBB sandbox character, go to the components and add the wanted BPC. Remember, this is very important, otherwise the logic will not execute. And there we go, we can see the stars at the top right. Maybe they're a bit big, but you can modify that as you want. But it's simply time to now update the stars when we go ahead and call this events. So let's go into the graph and implement the functionality over here, because it's gonna be simply way better if we do this directly in the widget than in the components. And in the component we can simply call this new custom event that will create to update everything. So let's add an event construct. The event construct is essentially the begin play of the widget, and we're gonna simply make sure that we create an array with all of these stars. So select all of these stars and click is variable. That way now we have them as a variable, and we can just drag them all individually. And yes, we cannot like hold shift and drag multiple, so it's just kind of just dragging one at a time is what it is. But then we can use the make array node and simply start to place them in an array, which is essentially a list. So we will have all of our stars in a list, and then we can right click and promote this new array into a variable, and this will be the stars. Literally like that. Or we can be, can be wanted stars, so it's a bit clearer, right? Whatever you prefer. But we have them as an array, so that means that now we can refer to any star with an index. So the first star will have the index 0, the second star will have the index 1, and so on. So let's right click over here and create a new custom event, and this will be something as update stars or update wanted stars, and we can call this at any time to update the widget itself. So this widget in the detail span will require a new input, which will be the wanted level, right? And of course this will be an integer. So depending on the wanted level, we will go ahead and update the stars or not. So let's go ahead and add a for each loop. Well, actually not a for each loop, but a for loop, because we're gonna go and move with control this to the last index, and we'll go from 0 to the last index. Now this array goes from 0 to 4, not 1 to 5. So we simply need to get this current wanted level and subtract 1, and now it will go from 1 to 5, if that makes sense, right? So with that said, we can simply just make sure to get the wanted level and get a copy with the current index. And then from here we can use this node in Unreal, which is the set color and opacity, which is a nice function. And we can just drag this and make this color, right? And then simply put 1, 1, and 1 for all the values except alpha, which will be, well, also 1. Yeah, also 1, because these are the stars that we want to activate. So they will go from being 0.3 of transparency to a whole number, right? Just to 1, so they're totally opaque. So essentially we are going through the whole array for the max amount of wanted level. So we have a wanted level of 3, it will go 1, 2, 3, and it will stop here because that's the last index of this array, if that makes sense. And for each one, we're gonna change the color to be totally opaque. Now we need to do also the opposite. We need to clean them. So every time that we update this, we're gonna do one little thing, which is to change, we'll control this over here in another sequence. And then let me just align this. How do it? There we go. And now I'm gonna simply get this and do a for each loop, and then copy this to nodes, put it here, and this will be back to 0.3. Okay, only the alpha, and connect this target to the target. Okay, so every time that we update these stars, we will set all of them to be 0.3, but then we will go and check which ones are the ones that we want to go ahead and only put the opacity to 1, right? And we're doing this because imagine that we update the stars to 5 stars, and then we want to update the stars once again to be at 2 stars, for example. Well, all of them will be to 1. So this is a quick trick to make them all 0.3 before we update them. So now we can go to the wanted, and when we increase them or set, we can simply just call this widget that we saved in a variable and do the update wanted stars. And I can just connect this here and this here. And the wanted level, of course, will be this value that we did. Great. So as an example, let's go real quick and use the 1 key. Let's do debug 1 key. And when we press this, we will increase the wanted level by 1. Okay. So now when I press play, as you can see, I have 0 stars. But when I press 1 in my keyboard, I start to add stars, and it only gets to 5. So everything is working as intended, as you can see, and we have a whole wanted level, which then we will go ahead and link with our police AI later on. Alright, so with all that done, it is time to begin creating our police AI so we actually can have some sort of interaction in our game. So let's go ahead and open up the blueprints folder, and right over here let's right click and create a new subfolder, which will be police. Inside of this folder, we'll begin to create our AI, classes and everything that we will need. So we are going to be using behavior trees to get the most advanced police AI we can in a very simple way. So let's right click, go inside of the artificial intelligence section and create the first thing, Blackboard. BD_police and save it. Now let's go once again into the artificial intelligence section and create a behavior tree, and let's call this BT_police, and this is the second thing that we need. With that done, let's double click to open up the behavior tree and make sure that in the details panel we have the Blackboard asset as police. Now let's right click, create another blueprint class, and this is going to be the AI controller. So search for AI controller, and boom, AI controller, select BP_AI_police. So let's open up this AI controller and let's make sure that we can go ahead and essentially execute the behavior tree. So in the event graph, let's delete the event tick, and in the begin play, we will simply put execute or run behavior tree, as you can see. So now we can select the BT police, and that's it. This AI controller will go ahead and execute this behavior tree when the game starts. Now let's go ahead and also create the AI police blueprint itself. So the actual character that we can place in the level, because this is simply an controller that will be placed in our AI. So we go to retargeted characters. What we can do is duplicate Lucia and change this to be _police, and then simply drag the _police into our police folder, say move here, and here we go. Now of course right now we don't have the police model. We will change that in a second, but first let's go ahead and make sure that the functionality is there. So the only thing we need to do is go into the class defaults and search for AI, and we can see if we scroll down that we have the AI controller class. Let's go ahead and change that to the new one, which is police, and then in the auto possess AI, put this to be placed in world or spawned, just in case we spawn police AIs in the future, and they will go ahead and make sure to move around. With that said, let's go and select the character movement component and search for plane, and make sure that this is enabled, so our AI will be able to move around. And we also will need one more thing in our movement character settings for the AI to work with motion matching, which is going to be, if we keep scrolling down, it's going to be under here, use acceleration for paths, which is basically for the nav mesh, right? The nav mesh is essentially the AI kind of boundary system that we will use. With that said, just as a demonstration, if in the begin play I say, okay, AI move to, I say, okay, pawn is going to be self, and then the target actor will be the get player character, you will see that the AI will move to me. But when I press play, nothing happens because we are missing a very important step, which is, as I mentioned, the nav mesh. So we go to the quickly to add to press section, and I go to the volume section, we can see this nav mesh. If I drag this and change the scale with a lock to like 50 or 20, you can see now if I press P in my viewport, we can see this green area. Basically, Unreal has calculated the area that the AI can move around. And now, yes, the AI follows me around using motion matching, which is really cool. Now, of course, we don't want to use this begin play, so let's delete that. This is only for a demonstration. We're going to be using the behavior tree. So, with that done, it is time to begin creating the states of the behavior tree. So let's open this up, and you can see this behavior tree. Now, I have made a few videos on behavior trees. If you want to see them a bit more in detail, go ahead and check those out. But essentially, behavior trees go downwards, from up to down and from left to right. So from the root, what we can do is add a sequence node. Sorry, selector. This selector is essentially going to go ahead and choose between two different sequences depending on a value. So for example, we're going to have a patrolling sequence and also a follow sequence, right, or a chase one. So let's begin with the patrol. So let's create a new sequence under the selector, and let's go ahead and change this to be the patrol sequence. Now, what we need to do now is go ahead and create different, tasks that the police will execute in this sequence. And I'm placing this patrol sequence on the left because, as I mentioned, it will go always from left to right, so the left will have priority, so our AIs will always start checking if we are, patrolling. So let's create a new task, and under police, let's right click, new folder, call this tasks, and let's rename this to task _ patrol. Now we are on the task itself, and as you can see, it's literally a blueprint. So let's go in the override functions, and we can see this receive execute AI. This is essentially the begin play of our task. So we can drag and say AI move to, which is a node that we use to move the AI, as we did in the demonstration that I did here in the begin play. But now let's drag in the controlled pawn to pawn, because this is the AI itself. And for the destination, we're gonna get a random reachable point in radius. So we'll get a random point in the nav mesh. The origin will be the get actor location of our current police AI, and the radius is how far away we want to go. This is up to you. We can put like 5,000, whatever you want. It's essentially the value on how far away he will patrol around. In my case, I think that 3,000 will be a better number because he will walk a bit and then stop and so on, but you can play around with that. And then the acceptance radius, let's increase that to 120 because it's gonna be how close it's gonna get, right? Then on the success, we can add this finish execute node and take this and then copy and paste this on fail, disable this, and this will mean that when it reaches the point, it will tell the task that it finished or not. And as simple as that. So now if I go back to the police behavior tree, in the sequence, if I find my patrol and press play, boom, he is patrolling around, as you can see, which is really cool. Right, he's picking a random point and then moving around. Now, first of all, let's go ahead and make sure that he will go to a point and then wait a couple of seconds, for example, 3 little seconds, okay? As you can see now, he will go, stop for 3 seconds, and then continue again, which is really cool. As you can see, we are adding literally just kind of blocks to our, behavior tree, which is really cool. Now let's make sure that by default, our police AI will walk. So in the class defaults, what we can do is scroll up until we see the walk option. So let's go ahead and just search for walk, and you can see wants to walk. Let's enable that by default, and now our AI will walk by default, more like a police would do when patrolling around the city. So we have that done. Now let's go ahead and make sure that he can chase us. So let's go back to the behavior tree and create a new sequence over here, okay? And this will be the, chase sequence, or whatever you want to call it, right? And as you can see, the selector is going to be the parent of these sequences, and the selector will essentially decide which sequence to play. So let's go ahead and create a new task. And in this case, we have created a new task, so we can create a child of patrol or a child of just the normal task. In this case, it's going to be that one. And under tasks, let's create a new task and call this task underscore chase target, for example. So I'm going to make it universal, so it doesn't matter if it's the player or any other target that we want. Let's go ahead and create this new task. And in the function, add the receive execute AI, which is, as you might remember, the begin play of the task. And with that said, we can simply start to add the logic. So we can add an AI move to, it will be the control pawn, and then the get actor. Just for now, let's plug in the get player character. As I mentioned, this will be a universal, task where it can follow any target. But just to get it up and running for now, let's just put the player character as a demonstration. Once again, put this to around 120. Well, actually, this has to be way higher because we want our police AI to shoot, not to have a melee attack. So let's increase that to around 500. Okay, so this will be the stopping distance, how far away it will stop to shoot in this case. And with that said, we can add a finish execute with it. Boom. And then another one. And then disabled, of course. And there we go. This will work. So if I go to the police AI and I drag this chase, nothing will happen if I press play. Why? It will still patrol, because the priority, as I mentioned, is on the left. Left will always be, executed first. But when I move this to the left, you will see that he will go ahead and chase me. Now, of course, he's still walking. We'll change that up, but as you can see, he also stops at 500 of distance, which is good for shooting. So let's go back over here into the behavior tree and put this back to normal. And what we need to do is make sure that our AI can see us and sense us, right? And depending on that, go ahead and chase the target or not. So for this, let's open up the AI controller, which is the one that runs the behavior tree, and essentially add a new component, which is going to be the pawn sensing. This component enables our pawn to hear and see, which is going to be key for this game. Let's go ahead and make sure that the visual angle is around like 85, and let's just leave all of the values by default. You can change the side radius if you want to, like 3,500, whatever you want to change, how far away the AI can see and all of this stuff, and can hear noises and everything. But we'll make sure that you can the AIs can hear when the player shoots, so it's going to be very, very important. Alright, so now on C pawn, we can essentially add a key over here, and we can execute logic if our AI sees us. Okay, so if he sees us, we need to go ahead and make sure that we enable the seeing player or chase player. So if we open up the blackboard, we can create a new boolean or update. So the keys are basically variables that are going to be used inside of our behavior tree, and we simply do that to the blackboard and Unreal Engine. So let's create a new variable, right, which are called keys, and we can create a boolean of is seen player. But as I mentioned, we want to chase any target, not only the player. So what we can do instead is create an object and just name this as target. And now we can say is okay, add a decorator and a blackboard decorator into this sequence, and select this new decorator. A decorator in behavior trees is just a way of adding some logic on top of our sequences, and the specific blackboard decorator can check for blackboard values. So we can select this and make sure that we are checking for the variable target, and if it's not set, we want to be on this sequence. And also the observer here, I'm going to put this on self, so it will go ahead and check for this condition every time. This will do exactly the same. Add decorator blackboard, select this blackboard, this is going to be target, but this time it's going to be set, and then also this on self. Okay, so now depending on this variable, if it's, you know, containing a target or not, it would change between the two sequences, which is exactly what we want. Okay, and as I mentioned, the decorators is a way of adding code on top of the sequences, and specifically the Blackboard decorator can check for values inside the Blackboard. Okay, so with that done, it is as simple as going into the AI police and making sure that we can update this target variable. So how can we do this? Well, we just right click and say get Blackboard, and we get this node over here, and then set value as. Now we don't have a way of saying, okay, set target and then get the variable that we created, which is a key, right? And set it. This uses a universal approach, which is by types. So in this case, we created an object type. So we'll say, okay, set value as object, and then from the key name, we make a literal name and put in here our name, which is target. And this is how we find it. Okay. Now make sure that you spell it exactly the same. I recommend to copy the name from here and paste it. And then for the value, of course, will be the pawn that the AI saw. And that's it. So if I press play, as you can see, he saw me, so he's chasing. But if I was to, you know, spawn more far away, well, he kind of saw me also. Let me go even more far away, like here, right? As you can see, he's patrolling. And as soon as I go in front of him, or her, right, in this case, he will go ahead and start chasing me, which is amazing. It's exactly what we want, so everything is going ahead and working perfectly fine. Now let's go ahead and make sure that the AI can essentially, you know, run when they are chasing us, right? Because right now they're gonna be slow, and of course also fire to us. So for this, let's go ahead and create an interface, so it's easier to communicate between our behavior tree and our AI character blueprint itself. So let's right click on the police folder, go to the blueprint section and create a blueprint interface. Let's call this BPI underscore police, and let's create some, you know, functionality. So the first one will be run, as we want to make sure to, you know, enable or disable running. Let's compile and let's add an input, okay? And this input will be, well, run, right? As a question mark, it will be a boolean, so we can also go back to walking. And we don't need to create another function for walk. You know, it's going to be a universal for run and walk, okay? And then let's create another one, and it's going to be fire. And this will not contain any inputs or whatever. So with that done, let's go into the CBP police, which is our character itself, right? Remember to not edit Lucia, even though it has the character, right? Make sure that you are in police, you know? We'll change the character later on, so don't confuse. Alright, and now let's go to the settings and add this interface over here. So search for BPI police, and now if I double click on the run interface, I can execute some code. And in this case, what I want to do is get set the character input state. As you remembered, this is the variable that contains all these states for, you know, walking, running, strafing, and aiming. So if I drag this and say, okay, make a new character input state, because it's essentially a struct, I can go ahead and modify these values, okay? And what I can do is get running and do a not boolean and put it on walk. So if this is true, it will inverse it to be not, so we will set walking to false, therefore we would go ahead and run. Now there's a difference between sprinting and jogging, okay? Because when you not walk, you go into a jog state, which is not the same as sprinting. Sprinting is even a bit faster, but we will not need that for our police AI, okay? For now, if you want to change that, we can, you know, go ahead and just put this like this. Sorry, like this, but we can play around with that in a second. Now, what we can also do is just get the current input state, right click and break it, and plug in all the other stuff so we don't lose if we are aiming or things like that, right? Now this is for the police AI, so the police AI will not really like matter if it's strafing or aiming, because you will not really see it. but it's just a nice thing to add just in case. Now let's go ahead and make sure that we can call this, interface function so the police AI can run. So in this case, we want to run when we go to the chase state. So in the police behavior tree, let's double click on the chase target, task, and right as soon as we start to execute this moving, we're gonna check if this AI does implement the interface of BPI police. If it does, that means that we can go ahead and execute the running. So let's double click here, drag and say, okay, run. And this is going to be run message, connect this, run to true. Copy these 3 nodes, actually this 4th as well. Give me a second, there we go, copy. And then you're gonna go into the patrol and do exactly the same. Paste, put this here, but in this case, set to false, because when we patrol, we want to go back to walking. And then remember to plug in the control point to here, and that's it. So I will check if it has the interface, and so I will call the function. As simple as that. So now if it's this mess, you can see it starts running, which is really cool. And of course, you can play around with the sprinting values and so on, as you can do with any character with motion matching. Alright, so now let's go ahead and make sure that the police AI can fire. So for this, let's go back to the behavior tree and create a new task from the blueprint base. Open up the tasks folder and call this task_fire. Once again, on the functions override, add the receive execute AI, which is essentially the begin play. And over here, I'm gonna just check if it does implement the police AI function interface, and then from there we can just say, okay, well, then fire. As simple as that, right? Boom. And then what we can do is drag from here and do a finish execute. And then if false, finish execute, disable this. And let's add a little delay. And there we go. So we'll have some time to, shoot. In this case, 5.2 seconds will work just fine. So now in the behavior tree, what we can do is drag this and say, okay, well, fire. And now, of course, nothing will happen because we haven't implemented the functionality to fire. So back in our character blueprint for the police, you simply double click on the fire. And on the fire, drag the BPC shooter and call fire, which is going to be this call function. Okay, it's not going to be the message from the interface. Remember, it's going to be the call function from the BPC shooter component, and that's it. Now we can fire. Now, if I go ahead and press play, you'll see the police goes ahead and fires when it reaches my destination, and it's really cool. Now, what we can do is change how often it shoots with this delay over here in the fire function. If I put this to 2.1, it will shoot way faster. If I set this to 0.03, it will shoot super fast. So it's essentially just playing around with the shooting values, as you can see, right? So really, it's whatever you prefer. I'm gonna put 0.1, I think, for now, but you can play with that, okay? And when we have the police model, it will look better. Now there's one more thing left to do, which is to change the task of chasing, because right now it will always get the player character, but we already built the functionality in the AI controller class to get the pawn sensing, right, and detect the the pawn that we just saw and put this as a variable. So in the chase target kind of task, we can create a new variable, and this will be the target to chase. Now this cannot be directly an object like this. This has to be a Blackboard key selector, compile, and then what we can do is make sure that this is exposed, okay? And now I can drag this, and I cannot directly just plug this here, okay? I can say get value as object, because as you might remember, this is a universal key value, and now we need to use this identifier to get the object, and then this cannot be also plugged here. We need to cast to actor, okay? Right click, convert to pure cast, so it's nice and easy, and plug this here. And boom, that's it. Now we still need to set what variable this is going to be. So in the behavior tree, select task chase target, and then make sure that the variable is set to target. Okay, and that's it. As you can see, it will work exactly the same, but now instead of always being hard-coded to follow the player, it will follow whatever pawn it sees. Okay, so this could be another pawn here, and it will chase the other pawn. All right, so that's it. It is time to go ahead and just import the police, AI kind of character, right? So I went ahead and imported this police AI character. I basically got it from a Lyritis bundle, which I collabed with them for a Black Friday sale. So maybe you still have time to get him, but essentially going to be using this AI. Now you can go ahead and choose whatever police AI character you find online. You can find one on free on Fab or Sketchfab or whatever, but you're gonna be using this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up this police AI, select Lucia, rename this to police, and then change the skeleton mesh asset to be the police officer. So in this case, I believe I need to go and select this one, skeleton mesh, plug it in, and then compile, save, and close, and open up this again so it reloads. And then in the tag, I think Lucia's might work, and then I might need to delete Lucia from here, well, the police AI, right, and drag it again so it reloads. And yeah, I would say this works. The hand is a bit messed up, so I think what I can do is real quick open this up, check the anim class, and check the other retarder maps, and I believe it's gonna be the, I don't know if UE5 or UE4, so I'm gonna copy this UE4 skeleton, search tag, and paste it. Yes, you can see that fixed the hands. Now it's perfect, and we have the police AI over here, and there we go, it's dead. Now as you can see, he's still shooting while he's dead. Now just make sure in the blueprints, weapons, BC shooter, that we have the dead check, and then also in the health we set this to true. Okay, it's very important, so we will not keep shooting. But I'm gonna also make sure that we do this on here. So let's go ahead and just get the health and make sure that we get the dead, and we only continue if it's not dead. So let's add the not boolean, and boom, that's it, fixed. So with that said, we have the police AI working just fine, which is really cool. And the last thing that we're gonna be doing for the police AI is making sure that he can hear us when we shoot. So instead of directly, chasing us when he sees us, right, which is a bit unrealistic, let's make sure that he can hear us when we shoot, and then, it's gonna be like a guy shooting in the street, so it's gonna go ahead and follow him, right? So let's go ahead and open up the main CVB sandbox character blueprint. Let's scroll down, and right over here, let's right click and create a new custom event, and this will be make noise. Awesome. Drag from here and say okay, make noise, and there's actually here a make noise function that we can use. And with that said, we can simply use the target itself, loudness as 1. The instigator is gonna be self, so it's gonna be us, This is the noise creator basically. And the location is gonna be the actor location, right? And then the max range, we can put something as 3,000 or even or 5,000, I would say, right? Something like that. I don't know. You can play around with that. File save. And now basically we're gonna go back to our police AI, and in the controller we can go into the sensing, disable this for now, select the component and add on here noise, and on here noise we'll do basically that, okay? And then the instigator will be the object value, so make sure that you select the instigator to be self, the player. Alright, so now as you can see, he doesn't chase me, but I want to shoot. Nothing still happens because we are not calling this event anywhere. So let's go open up the weapons folder, shooter component, and basically when someone fires, after we play, for example, the montage of firing, we can do a play sound, so we can get the character and then make noise and use the make noise call function. Remember, okay, it has to be the function. And that's it. Now, yes, when I'm here and I shoot, still nothing happens because of the distance. So we need to make sure that on the, where is it? On the AI police component here, yes, we make sure that on the pawn sensing, first of all, we have can hear noises, and then also the threshold. Right now it's pretty low, so let's set this to be like 5,000, so he can hear it more far away. And still, oh yeah, so I'm hitting him. And still, we're gonna go to here and increase this to, let's say, like, imagine 10,000, right? Just to be sure. And on top of that, we also need to go ahead and to make sure on the hear noise that, but we are missing a very important component, which is the noise emitter. So we need to add this on the pawn, okay, basically on our player character, to make sure that we can actually play a sound. And that's it. Now press play, he hears the sounds and he goes and chases, which is really, really cool. Now additionally, let's make sure that the AIs can start to chase the player, but only if the player has a wanted level. Okay, so imagine that the player has a wanted level, let's say like 3, and he's, you know, running around. If a police sees the player, he will only start to also chase him if he has, you know, a wanted level. That makes sense. So let's quickly just go to the blueprint section, go to right click, blueprint interface, and create a new interface for the player. So this would be kind of just BPI player. And let's create two little functions. One is going to be add wanted level, and this is going to be the mount. Okay, so we can do this to an interface, it's going to be better. Make sure this is going to be an integer, and let's create another function which will be the check or get wanted level, you know, or just is wanted. I think it's going to be better. Yeah, so just is wanted, and this will return an output this time, so not an input, of, you know, wanted question mark and then a boolean. So now in the player sandbox character, go to the class settings and add this new interface, the player. Make sure it's not police, it's player, right? And then on the interface we have here add wanted level is wanted and all this stuff. So for example, for is wanted, we can get the wanted component, get wanted level, and if this is basically bigger than 0, it means that it's wanted, you know. And then for the add wanted level, that will click on this, get the wanted component and use the increase wanted level that we created and plug in the amount over here. Okay, and that's it. So we just need to make sure that we call this when we want. So for example, when we go ahead and in the AI controller we start to chase the player, we can just get the pawn and do a thus implement interface, check if it has the player interface. So BPI player, this is gonna be before for the onC, add a branch, and then we can do okay, check or wanted, how was it? Yeah, is wanted. Okay, so we're gonna use this, and if the result is true, right, adding a branch, we will continue and do this. Awesome, copy this to nodes, go here, paste it here, and then when we make a sound, plug this here. If it has the AI controller thing, we will just increase or add wanted level, right? Boom. And let's add it by 1, okay? And we can only add the wanted level 1 time, okay? Let's go ahead and copy this into this one and just plug in this to here, okay? And now if we go in front of him, it doesn't happen. But if I shoot, he comes to me. As you can see, I have 2 stars, right? Which is really cool. And we don't have any more police AIs, but if there was another one, you know, it will go ahead and start to also, you know, shoot me and everything, right? Only if I'm wanted and he didn't hear the sound or anything like that. So now let's make sure that when we are wanted and a police detects us, it will start to play some police sirens and also some, you know, police radio audios and so on. So inside the audio folder, right click new folder. It's gonna be like police, and then I'm gonna link these 2 sounds in the description. Just go ahead and download them and drag them into the content browser. And then for the police siren, double click and make sure that looping is enabled. Okay, this is very important, but only for the siren, not for the radio. And now just go ahead and open up the wanted component over here. And then once we are wanted, we're gonna do a do once. And then simply do a spawn sound. Where is it? 2D. And this is gonna be the the police siren, okay? And then it's gonna be the police siren audio. And we're gonna also spawn another sound 2D, which is gonna be the police radio. It's gonna be police radio audio. Okay, and we are spawning them instead of playing, because we can get a reference as a variable, so then we can stop them once we are no longer wanted and all that stuff, you know? So if I go ahead and shoot, okay, there we go. We're playing a lot of sounds. And with all that done, it is time to go ahead and add some traffic cars into our level. Now, we're going to be using this free asset, which is on Fab. I will link it in the description, which is a vehicle variety pack. So just go ahead and add this into your Fab library and open up the Epic Games launcher. And make sure to go ahead and reload the Fab library in your Epic Games. And just click on Add to Project. And make sure to click on Show All Projects so we can see our project in 5.5. And you select the latest compatible version, which is 5.4, and click on Add to Project. And as always, don't worry, it will go ahead and convert everything to 5.5. And there we go, we have added the project. Okay, so now we have them over here in this folder. And if I go to, for example, meshes, I can drag them into our level, and you will see that they're pretty cool. So we have just this, you know, 5 different vehicles, which is gonna be cool. And honestly, 5 is pretty much enough for a whole lot of combinations, okay? You will see in a second. I don't know why it's taking so much time to load, but basically, boom, we can see the car over here. It's looking insane, right? So we'll basically just move them around through a spline in a loop, okay? And we'll also move the wheels. And this will create the illusion that we have a lot of, you know, traffic cars in our level. It's gonna be insane. So let's open up the blueprints folder. And right over here, let's create a new folder for vehicles. And let me spell that correctly. There we go. And now let's right click and create a new blueprint class, actor. And this will be BP underscore traffic vehicle. Okay? And it's gonna be an actor because it's simply mesh in the world, and it will move with a spline, right? Instead of a whole little you know, movement component or anything. So let's go ahead and add here a cube, which will be the thing that will move, and I will let you know why we're using a cube as a parent. And I'm gonna change this to be like yeah, just one will work. And then on top of that, let's select the default scene root and add a spline, and it's gonna be the spline utility. Okay, go ahead and compile and save, and then let's go ahead and just make sure that everything is by default. You can change this to be a closed loop, but for now, let's just leave it like this, okay? I mean, you can, yeah. For now, like this will work, okay? So, with that done, under the cube, let's add a skeleton mesh, which will be the vehicle. And now, over here, we can assign a vehicle, right? A car. So, if I open this up and select, for example, a sports car, which is pretty cool, I can just assign it. So yeah, so we have static meshes or skeleton meshes. We need to use the skeleton meshes because we will need to turn the wheels, and the wheels are essentially just sockets that we will turn in the animation blueprint. So you will see that in a second. Let's also just make sure that the vehicle will align with the floor. There we go, that's perfect. So -50 will work. And then let's make sure under the cube that the visibility is set to false, okay? And also the collision set to no collision. But for the vehicle, we have block all dynamic, okay? Alright, so now if I drag this into my level, what we can do is put this higher. So I need to actually, yeah, so actually I might not need to do the -50, I'm thinking. Yeah, that's perfect actually. Okay, great. So just leave it by default on 0. And then I can select this spline, as you can see, and start to move it, okay? And I can simply start to hold Alt to create, you know, different spline points, as you can see. And we're building a whole little spline. Now when I press play, nothing happens, so we just need to go ahead and make sure that this vehicle will move. So back in our, you know, traffic vehicle blueprint, let's go ahead and create some variables. So the first variable that we will need is gonna be the speed. Okay, it's gonna be the speed of the car. This will be a float. Let's make sure to click this eye icon so it's exposed in our level. We can change this like that, okay? So by default, let's put 500. 500 is a value that I like, so let's leave that like that. And then we need to create another one, which is gonna be the distance. It's gonna be a float, and by default, it's gonna be 0. Okay, and this is gonna be the distance of the car in the spline. It will simply increase the distance variable, and it will go ahead and move around this line. Okay, so in the event graph, delete the begin play, and then just go into the event tick, and let's go ahead and make sure to get the speed and times this by the delta seconds, which is every frame, right? And with this, we can add, okay, this value to the distance. Okay, now make sure that this is multiplying the speed and this is adding the distance, okay? Because you might confuse over here the nodes, which are very similar, right? So with that said, this will be the new distance, right? Because it's gonna be that difference in frames times the speed plus the current distance. So this is the new distance, right? And this value is the one that we want to update the spline to. So we can simply just get the spline component and use this. Well, first of all, we can actually just get the cube itself. And like I said, we're using the cube as a parent because it's simpler, right? Imagine that we change the vehicle skeleton mesh and it has a different pivot, right? Imagine. Well, just making sure that the parent is going to be the same is going to be easier. So drag this and set the relative transform, okay? It has to be important that it's relative and not in world transform because we are using this spline which is inside of this blueprint, right? So everything's going to be local. So drag from here and make a new transform or relative transform. Sorry, no, that's actually going to be transform. There we go. And we can have the location, rotation, and scale. So now, yes, from our spline component, we have this very useful node, which is the get transform at distance along spline. And if I right click and split this, we get this output. So I can plug the location and rotation into here. Okay, and it's important that we have to do the rotation so we get, you know, where it's facing. And with that said, we can plug in the distance into the distance value and we get that location. Now make sure that also the coordinate space is local and the scale is going to be the same just that the cube is. So I can just say, okay, get relative scale 3D. There we go. So with that said, you will see that the car will move, as you can see, which is insane. It will follow this spline pattern, but when it gets to the end, boom, it stops. So to make it loop, we can simply check each time after we move it if we have reached the maximum amount of distance for each spline, okay? So we can get the distance and check if this is greater or equal than the spline length, okay? If it's bigger than the spline length, that means that we want to set distance to 0, therefore it will reset. And I mean, this will work, you will see in a second, right? Boom. But of course it doesn't look good because we will need to close the loop, right? So I could click the spline here and say, okay, close loop. It will close the loop. As you can see now, it will work. Now you can add more steps here, so I could hold Alt to move this here. And then Alt to here. And it will simply look way better, but you get the idea. We have this over here. Now we just need to make sure that the wheels will go ahead and also move. So let's go ahead and do that. So the very cool thing about these cars, as I mentioned, is that there are skeleton meshes. So if I go ahead and open up one of them, right? They literally have sockets and bones for each wheel, which means that I can select this one and rotate the bone itself. Control Z. And we can do this in an animation blueprint every frame, and then we just spin. So over here, let's right click and create a new animation blueprint, and we're gonna search for vehicle. And as you can see, we have a vehicle skeleton, and this is gonna be a generic one for all of them, okay? So we are not gonna have individual skeletons for each car. We have a whole generic one for each one, so it's easier. Let's name this ABP_vehicle. Open this up, and now let's get started with the rotation of the wheels. So in the event graph, in the update, we can execute, code. So we can simply do is create a new variable, which will be the, wheels rotation. Make sure that this is a rotator, and then I can simply drag this and set it. Right click and split it to get all of the axes. Delete this, and then I can simply get the current one, split it, and then simply add an offset. So the X to the X will be the same, but then the Y, which is the pitch, I need to add -10, and then drag this into the Y pitch. And then the Z is going to be the Z, okay? So the Y is the axis that we need to change. As you can see, this rotation should be like increasing every time. Of course, we're not playing the game, so we cannot see this, but if I go to the name graph, I just need to place some stuff. So there's this very useful node, which is the local component node. And component to local. So we can simply use this to drag and use this node, which is the modify bones, okay? Which is gonna be or transform bone. There you go, modify transform bone. This is what we want. So plug this here. Oh, it was the other way around, that's why. Okay, well, that's the thing. Well, now it doesn't matter, plug this here. Okay, and then what we can do is select this node, scroll down, in translation, click on expose to pin to hide it, and the same with the scale, click expose to pin, and now we only have the pin for the rotation. Now in rotation mode, click on replace existing, and now simply go and drag the wheel's rotation. Now this will only happen for one bone, because I can go here and select the front wheel, and we will not see anything. So we need to do it for the 4 wheels. So just copy paste this here, and this will be the next bone, which is this one, and then copy and paste. This will be for the next one, which is this one. Copy and paste the next one, and then connect this to all of them, and then as soon as I compile, boom, all the wheels are spinning. Now the speed is this value. This has to be negative, remember, so it goes in the correct direction, and then 10 is basically the speed. So as you can see, this will match pretty good. Okay, so yeah, so as you can see, they're not spinning because we still need to add this new animation blueprint to the traffic car blueprint. So if I open this up, I can select the skeleton mesh, and then ABP, I can search for ABP vehicle, which is the one that we created. As you can see now, they spin. And there we go. And as you can see, the speed matches pretty good the one that we have on the spline. So everything is working just fine. As you can see, it's looking pretty good. And we can change this car to be whatever we want, right? So we could also additionally create a new variable, and this will be, you know, for example, cars. And we're gonna have a list of skeleton meshes. Okay, and then this can be an array. And then what I can do is add, I think there were 5, right? And I can start to add them. So for example, we could have the first one to be the sports car. A second. There we go. I don't know why it didn't let me to drag it. Then we can have, like, for example, this one. Then we can have this SUV. Then we can have this truck. Boom. And then we can have this hatchback. And boom. And now what we can do is in the construction script, simply get this vehicle and set the skeleton mesh asset to be a random one from the list. And if I move this, oh yeah, so as you can see, it's changing the skeleton of the wheels and everything, but it's not changing the mesh itself, which is kind of weird. So let me just do this on the begin play instead, okay? Drag this here, connect this, boom, and now when I press play, as you can see, it changes to random car, which is pretty cool, right? So I could go ahead and create another car here, and we have our track and a little thing. This is so cool, as you can see, right? I mean, it's literally amazing. I love this so much. So there we go, we have our traffic cars done, and they're looking amazing. And now, and as soon as we have the wow, they will look even better. And with all that done, it is time to begin creating our city. So for the city, I'm going to be using a plugin called City BLD. I recently made a showcase about it, and it's essentially a plugin that allows you to create cities like if it was, you know, city skylines, by literally going ahead and dragging the mouse to create roads, literally just creating blocks and then creating buildings from those blocks. And there's a whole bunch of features that are in the plugin. So in this case, I'm gonna go into edit, plugins, and right over here under editor I have the whole pack. So I just need to enable CDBLD, and then I also need to enable Miami and Modern City Kit. And with that done, I simply need to restart now. And there we go, the project has restarted, so now I have all of the plugins enabled. And I'm gonna also mention that, of course, I will link some alternatives in the description for free. For example, the own matrix demo, which has some buildings that you can use and so on. But for this example, I'm gonna be using this, you know, plugin because it's simply amazing. Alright, so now that I have the plugins enabled, it is time to begin creating the city. So as I mentioned, you can of course go ahead and choose an alternative which is free, like for example the matrix demo from Epic Games or whatever other asset that you might have in your library. So with that said, let's go up into File and create a new level. In this case, let's select Basic and hit Create. Now let's go ahead and delete the floor and go up into the landscape section. And over here, let's go ahead and create a new landscape. So you can select the size over here. In this case, I could do 127 by 127 and hit on Create. And there we go, we have a nice little island created. Well, a whole landscape really, right? So now what I can do is go up here into the selection mode and change this into the city builder mode. And as you can see, I have different plugins, or in this case kits, that I can use to build my city. So in this case, of course, I'm going to be using the Miami kit. Let's add this over here, and this is going to be the most similar to GTA 6 Vice City. So as you can see, we have multiple types to create our city. So let's begin with the roads, and select the road tool, and select a road preset, in this case Downtown Boulevard. And now I can hit on draw and go ahead and create a big avenue. So a 900-meter avenue. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and create another road over here and join this. There we go. So you can see it's creating a really nice road and joining everything, which is really cool. Let me go ahead and join this one with this one, and let me do this one more time over here, and then join this with this, and finally join this one, and there we go. We have our roads created. So now it is time to begin to add some buildings. So if I go up here into the block section, what I can do is create a block from the road edges. So boom, and let's do the same over here. Boom. Super cool, right? So now what I can do is select these two block shapes and assign a district preset. In this case, I am going to be doing break it downtown and click on assign. And now if I hit, for example, this one and click on generate base, it will generate some buildings. And boom, as you can see, we have a whole bunch of cool buildings. So let's go ahead and do the same on this one. Let's select this and click on generate base, and boom, we have created a really cool avenue over here, as you can see. So let's go ahead and change the sun rotation to around this over here. There we go. And I'm gonna go back to the selection mode and just save this level as the city. And now let's go to the wall settings, and in the game mode override, let's go ahead and select GM single player, which is our own game mode. Let's go ahead and save one more time, and now we can go ahead and press play and play with our character Lucia in our incredible Vice City world. So right click and play from here. And as you can see, I'm here with Lucia in this amazing avenue, which looks insane, as you can see. And I literally built this in like 5 minutes, which is amazing. So now we can start to do some things to improve this. The first thing is going to be searching for fog and making sure that it's set as volumetric fog, and this is going to make the fog look 10 times nicer. Then I'm going to go over here and go back into my city builder mode. I'm going to go to the building section, and I'm going to assign and select this tower. I'm going to place it, and I'm going to go ahead and place this tower over here at the end of the avenue. So from the player perspective over here, it looks like it's a full city, and it continues, right? It's overlapped by other stuff. As you can see, we can also place other stuff here. So for example, I can get this building here and put this right around here, so it doesn't look completely empty. Of course, the building wouldn't go necessarily there, but it's used to fill that gap. And I'm gonna do exactly the same over here. And of course, this is up to you, but there we go. And now I'm gonna do the same here. There we go. And I believe there's, yeah, 2 more over here. So let me place this here. And I would say that's pretty much it. I think that everything looks pretty neat. I'm very happy with it. So now if we go back to the selection mode and we save, we have a whole avenue, which is looking really cool. So to improve this just a bit more, let's go ahead and add a post-process volume so we can, up a bit of the color grading and so on. So let's go up here into the quickly add to the price section, go to visual effects and drag a post-process volume, center this, search for infinite extend so it impacts the whole level, and let's go down until we see exposure. And exposure, let's enable this too, and let's reduce this range of max to around 5 and the minimum to around -2 or something. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And on top of that, I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down until I see color grading, and in global, in contrast, I'm gonna put this to 1.05 or even 1.1. This yeah, 1.1 I think looks pretty cool, and it's gonna just make things look a bit more vibrant, you know, without touching the saturation and things like that, which will make it too burnt out. So with that said, it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna also find the player start, select this, and then I'm gonna go over here and then right click and say snap object to view, scroll up and set the rotation for X and Y to 0, zoom out and press Ent on my keyboard. It will snap to the ground, and now we have a cool player spawn, exactly what I want. So it's a cool trick that you can do with the outliner. Just right click and say snap object to view, or the other way around, and it's really easy to place objects where you precisely want to. And now I can go ahead and press play, and we can play once again as Lucia in our incredible avenue, which is gonna look insane, as you can see. Wow, this is this is amazing. So I think it's time to add our traffic into the map. So in order to add our traffic, cars and vehicles and all of this stuff, I'm gonna go to the beginning of the road over here, and I'm gonna go ahead and simply open up my blueprints folder and enter in vehicles and drag the BP traffic vehicle. I'm gonna rotate this around 90 degrees. We're actually just disable snapping, and I'm gonna adjust this to be kind of the same. Now I believe that I can select the road, and yeah, this is gonna be hard, right? Well, I can put 190. Yeah, 19 is not gonna be okay. So I just need to basically adjust a bit by hand, but it's not a big of a deal because all of this, as you can see, is just on 0. So I just need to kind of align it with the marks in the ground, and there we go. So with that said, what I can do is simply select the spline and just go ahead, hold Alt, and stretch this until the end of the road, and just keep adjusting the line over here. And it's just carrying on. It's a long road. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and go like until here just for now, and boom. So you could ideally create a whole traffic system and make them go around the road and go back here so they loop, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm gonna just make it simple and go in this avenue, and that's it. But of course you can make it so that it will go ahead and do crazy stuff. Now, as you can see in this section here, you know, it did some crazy stuff. It added like an end point. So let me delete this point, and that should be it. Yes, I believe that should be it. If I press Alt S, this should go forward. Let's go ahead and double check. There we go. And it's going forward, as you can see. And the reason because it didn't start here is just because of my spline points. It's just how they are set up, because I kind of did it fast, so we have this kind of yeah, it basically starts here. So let me just move this to here. There we go. Now it will begin here, right? So with that done, let's go ahead and select this traffic vehicle and simply duplicate it a few times. Okay, and we'll go ahead and create the whole traffic system. And then let's select this 3 and duplicate this one more time, and make sure to place them right here so the offset's not crazy. Then you put this more like this, and now select all of them one more time, and boom. And then we can simply slowly create our traffic like this, as you can see. Just make sure that they're a bit randomized, you know, in terms of locations. So really, for example, they should be here, It should be here. It should be more like this. You know, it's just basically randomizing them a bit. And if I was to do this a couple more times, okay, and just duplicate one more time, I can start to get the result that I want. And let me do one more round, okay guys? One more round. There we go. Make sure it's aligned. Perfect. So now, as you can see, we have a bunch of cars. And the cool thing is that by code, when we press play, they will get a random car model. So it will look 10 times better once we press play. So let's wait a second over here. Press play. And boom! How cool does this look? It's insane, right? We have trucks and everything. We start to get this world alive, which is the best part. But one of the most important things is to make sure that we have some audio, right? So on top of that, on top of audio, I'm gonna add one more time of cars. Okay, last time, okay, and there we go. Great. All right, now yes, let's go ahead and add some audio. All right, so let's open up the audio folder, and right over here, let's right click and create a new folder for, you know, just traffic, for example. And let's go ahead and add this traffic loop, which once again I will link in the description. Double click to open this up and make sure that it's set as looping, save and close, and then just drag it into the level. We can set the volume to be whatever we want, in this case 0.8, something like that. And now yes, if I go ahead and press play, you will see how good this will look and sound, right? Because we have the whole thing, the whole pack. We have the visuals and the sounds, and sounds do add a lot on building environments and also use game mechanics. So if I press play and wait a couple seconds, it sounds amazing, as you can see. There we go. As you can see, I'm pretty much out of memory because of this world, but you get the idea. It's looking absolutely amazing. Alright, so now we have traffic in our city, but we also need civilians. And the very cool thing about this plugin is that it's very easy to add civilians using Mass AI. Mass AI is a real feature that enables us to, you know, spawn like hundreds of AIs walking around by saving performance. So in this case, it's super easy to set up with this plugin. I just need to go into edit, press settings, and then search for zone graph, and then go ahead and create a new zone graph and so on. So new lane profile is gonna be, for example, traffic, and this will have 2 lanes. One is gonna be forward, another one backward. And then I need another tag, which will be traffic, and then this can be traffic and traffic. And now actually I'm gonna put, you know, vehicle traffic, so it's a bit more. There we go, and that's it. Now I can go and open up the city builder panel over here and go inside of the traffic settings, and we also have road traffic and everything, super cool. But in this case, I'm gonna go into the civilian, and then I can select these 2 sidewalks. I'm gonna check if they have walkable as enabled. They do. So I just simply need to select the profile, the tag, and then click on set up zone shapes, and that's it. If I now go here and search for mass spawner, I can expand this and put a count of like 200, and then I can add an entity type. For example, I can add the modern base, and then I can add the zone graph spawner and set the any tag to be the vehicle traffic. And now if I go ahead and press play, you will see that we have a lot of civilians in the sidewalks, and it will look 10 times better. And there we go. They are spawning. I'm walking around, and the performance is exactly the same. We have a lot of out of memory there in the corner, I know, but don't listen to that. That's just really for the buildings and some stuff because I'm recording too. But the Mass AI is super well optimized, as you can see. But of course, you know, they are a bit boring. First of all, we need to add a bit more, and then, you know, they're simply just kind of mannequins walking around. So let's go ahead and spice things up in this plugin. Alright, so let me go ahead and just increase the Mass AI spawn rate to like 350. Okay, so we'll have a bit more of civilians. And also what I have done is migrated 3 different NPCs. So I basically made them real quick in Revolution Character Creator 4, as I did with Lucia, but a bit of a lower quality, right? So again, I will try to leave them in the description so you can load them and put them in the game as a bonus for the master class, okay? And again, if you can't get them to work for textual reasons or whatever, what you can do is simply just get whatever character from Mixim or Sketchfab or whatever, right? I mean, they're just generic characters, so there'll be a lot of free ones out there. So with that said, and having this skeleton meshes, what I'm going to do is in the mass spawner, find my entity config, which is this one, right? And simply go ahead and drag this into the content folder and click on copy here. And then I'm gonna change this to be the cd mass entity config and replace this, okay? And I'm gonna put this inside of NPCs. Open this up, and in this mass entity config, what I can do is expand all of this, and in crowd visualization, just find this third person character, and then simply copy this into the content folder, okay? And move this into NPCs. So this blueprint is essentially the NPC. So let me just rename this to BP_NPC. And now when I open this up, what I can do is just put in whatever NPC. So I can go ahead and put NPC1, for example, and there we go. It's walking and everything. But of course, we need to get a random NPC. So I'm gonna create new variables of NPCs. And this will be a skeletal mesh asset as an array. I'm gonna add 3 of them. So it's gonna be NPC1, NPC2, and lastly NPC3, okay? And then in the construction script, what I'm going to do is simply go ahead and pick a random one, very similar to what we did with the cars. Now in this case, I should be able to put them in the construction script instead of the begin play. So I can just get a random and then get the mesh and set the skeletal mesh asset to be this one over here. And now if I save everything and press play, we should see a lot of different civilians using the new NPCs. But we are missing one little step, which I forgot, which is to replace this blueprint in the entity config. Otherwise, it would still be getting the reference of the other old, you know, character blueprint. So if we go to here, what I can do is simply look for NPC and apply that on both fields over here on high and low res, okay? And now, yes, I can save this and press play. And now we should see a lot of different NPCs on the street. So if you're using Mass AI, this is exactly the same process. And there we go. We're having random characters. Now, as you can see, we're having a big amount of a certain amount of models, right? So this is just really playing around with the amount of randomness, really. But in this case, for this video, it will be more than enough. It looks really, really cool, as you can see. So we have a bunch of NPCs walking, which is amazing, and it's starting to, you know, give a really cool feeling. And we of course now need to add the police AIs in our city, so they will be wandering around. Now we could create a random spawner, but in this case for this avenue I think it's better if I hand place them, right? And yes, I also just went ahead and added more cars over here, and I know that in this lane they should be going, you know, the other way, right, instead of going the same direction, but it just looks better, not gonna lie, from this. If you see a lot of cars going that way too, so it's gonna look like this. Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna simply go here and enter in my police folder and just drag, for example, 2 police officers, space them over here, and then I can, okay, so yeah, so when you select them, because they have a camera, it's just kind of hard to see what's going on right in the viewport, so I guess I will need to go one by one and add a bit more of them over here. I'm gonna add just 4. I think that's enough for this demo, right? But you get the idea. So now I should be able to go and get into a fight with them and everything like that. But let's do also one little thing, which is gonna be adding the nav mesh, because otherwise they kind of walk. Remember that Unreal for AIs, they always require a nav mesh. So let's go up here into the volumes and add a nav mesh, and this nav mesh will be in the middle of the sidewalk. This get rid of the lock, and then you simply expand this, okay, to like 50 or something, or yeah, 100, I guess, right? 100 is a good number, and then make sure that they are aligned. And if I press P, we can see the whole area, which is pretty cool. Alright, so now yes, they will be able to move around. And if you wonder why the Mass AI doesn't require the nav mesh, it's because, well, Mass AI has its own lane system, so it's a bit different from nav meshes, which is quite nice, because that means that we need to, you know, place nav meshes all around the city in every sidewalk, right? It saves a bit more time. So if we go ahead and press play one more time, we should see the cops. There we go, wandering, which is pretty cool. Oh my goodness, they went into the car. Okay, so one very important thing that we need to make sure is that the nav mesh will not go to the road. So, not gonna lie, there's no special trick to this. It's simply just making sure to put this in, okay? There's some volumes that we could add to the road, but trust me, it's way simpler if we simply do this, okay? And that should be it. Okay, that should be better. So now, yes, they should not go and jump and hijack cars. I mean, it looks like they are the thieves in this case. Alright, so if we go here, there we go. And if I shoot, we have a whole crazy this is looking very cool, as you can see. It's looking amazing. Now let's also make that when you directly fire at the, you know, police AI, they will also go ahead and chase you, right? Because right now they do it by silence and so on, but just imagine that you shoot them, they don't hear it. Well, they wouldn't chase you, right? Which is kind of weird. So let's go ahead and open up this over here, and as you can see, we have the, where is it, the BBC Health, right? And the BBC Health goes ahead, if I open this up, right, right here, goes ahead and gets the take damage and does this, right? So basically what we can do is go in here and add an event any damage, which is the same event, and simply go ahead and make sure they will follow us. So let's open up the police AI controller. As you can see, what we need to do is just set the value as object. So let's copy this, go here and paste this, and this will be the damage causer, and this will be the player. So we will need to get the damage causer. Yes, damage causer. All right, there we go. So we need to make sure that on the where is the weapons BPC shooter, right? When we apply damage causer is set as the owner. Right? Otherwise, this will be empty. This is important. And now, yes, this will go ahead and work. When we shoot them, they should always go ahead and follow us. So if we press play over here, it looks quite silly to see all the red cars, but once we press play, it's like, wow, it's like magic. This works, as you can see. I shoot him and then he goes ahead and follows me, which is pretty cool, as you can see. So we are having a pretty cool progress over here. Let me hit play again, and I really think that, you know, the whole vibe is looking amazing, as you can see, right? The only thing that could be improved, I would say, is a bit the NPCs, in terms of maybe adding a few more kind of values, let's say, right, or NPC variations, and making sure that, you know, they will have like maybe more of a random animation instead of the same one and things like that. But overall, it's looking amazing. We could add more cars, but it's looking insane. Alright, so with that done, I want to do one quick thing to the police AI. And yes, I am back in the testing level, so it's a bit quicker to play around with things. So right now, if I press play and I shoot at the police AI, as you can see, when I'm at a certain distance, he aims correctly with his pistol. But as you can see, when I'm close to him, he doesn't continue to aim at me. This is because he only goes ahead and aims while he's moving, because of the AI movement, you know, node. It simply goes ahead, goes to the point, and then doesn't move anymore until we go far away. So what we're going to do is open up the CBP Police character blueprint, and you can see the event tick. So make sure that you execute the code after the parent tick. Is very important. I mean, if you don't have this, just right click and click on add code to parent function. And on here, let's go ahead and say set actor rotation. And what we need to do is find the rotation of our player, right, to be able to aim. So there's this very handy node in Unreal, which is the find look at rotation. And this will give us the rotation of a starting point and a target. So the start point will be the get actor location, and the target will be, well, our player character. Now, a better way to do this will be to get the target of our blackboard value, because imagine that, you know, it's not the player what we are trying to aim to, right? So let's right click and say get blackboard, and then simply get value as object. Okay, and on here, let's go ahead and drag and say get actor location, but we can't because we're going to cast to actor. Okay, right click to convert this into a pure cast, and then yes, we can say get actor location. Okay, and this will give us the rotation to aim from our police AI to the player, or whatever is the target, right? Because it's universal. Let's go ahead and realign this, and make sure that we will only do this if we are currently having a, you know, target. So first of all, let's go ahead and say make literal name, and this will be target make sure that you spell it exactly the same as we did down here. Okay, so if you want, you can copy and paste just in case. And then we're gonna add an is valid, okay, which is gonna be this one over here. So it will only go ahead and execute this logic if we have a target. Okay, so in the patrolling, it will not go ahead and look at me, right? Which just makes sense. So now, as you can see, he will always look at me, and it's fixed. There we go. So that was a quick fix. So now our police AI will always aim at the player. And with that done, it is finally time to add our car into the game so we can drive it. So in the content browser, let's click on add, feature or content pack. And under blueprint, very important, scroll down until we see the vehicle example and just click on add to project. And now we have a plugin that we need to enable, so click on enable missing, and then we will need to restart the project, so click on restart now or manually close it and open it, however you prefer. Alright, so now we have all of the vehicle plugins enabled, and as you can see, we have a new vehicles folder where we have a sports car and an off-road car. In this case, let's go ahead and select the sports car. So under content, search for sports car, scroll down, and as you can see, we have a sports car pawn. This is essentially the blueprint that handles all of the driving movement and so on. So select this and press Ctrl B, and in the folder, scroll up until we see blueprints, vehicles, and drag this into our folder. There we go. Let's go ahead and rename this to BP underscore drivable vehicle, so we have a nice copy, and drag this into our level. And there we go. So now we just need to make sure that we can press E and interact with it. So under the blueprints folder, right click and create a new blueprint class, and this will be an actor component, so it's nice and organized as always. And let's name this BPC underscore interact. So delete the event tick, and now we need to add an interact input. In this case, we got content input. As you can see, we already have an interact action event, which is set as the E key, which is perfect. So we go here, we can just say IA underscore interact, use the enhanced action event, and there we go. So over here, in order to interact, let's add a sphere trace by channel, which will enable us to detect any objects that have a specific channel. We're gonna go ahead and create a unique one for our interactables. So for the start and end point, let's get the player camera manager, and then get the location, and this will be our start point. And then for our endpoint, we need to get the rotation and get the forward vector to see the direction that we're looking at. And then we simply need to times this by a value, which will be a float, and this will be around 500. And then we can add this to here, and this will give us the endpoint. Now let's put the radius to be like 25, and then for duration to 1 second, so we can preview this. And now if we open up our blueprints folder and our sandbox character, we can go ahead and add this new component. And now, as you can see, when I press play, I can press E and interact with things, which is super cool. So let's go back into our BBC interact, and if we have detected something, let's add a branch, and let's add a break hit. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can only detect the interaction of our channels. So under press settings, go to collision and add a new trace channel, and let's name this interact table, and the default one will be to north. Okay, so now back in here, we can compile and set this to be interactable, and make sure to open up the drivable vehicle, select the mesh, scroll down, and set this to custom, and then the interact table set to block. And as you can see now, I cannot detect the ground or anything like that, but yes, my sports car, which is exactly what we want. So back in our here, let's go ahead and make sure that we can interact with it and say like, okay, let's drive this. Okay, so for this, let's go ahead and make sure that we can go ahead and create an interface. So in the blueprints folder, vehicles, create a new blueprint interface, BPI vehicles or vehicle, and then this will be drive. I'm gonna send a reference of our player. Okay. Yeah, I'm spelling correctly. There we go. And then this will be sandbox character. Okay, so CBP sandbox character. Okay, so not ABP, but it's CBP. Very important. All right, so now we can go into our sports car and add our BPI vehicle, and then we can double click to add the drive functionality, and we can add, for example, a print string. So now when we go here and press E, nothing happens because we need to go to interact and make sure that we say, okay, drive, you know. And for the player, we need to send this in a second, but if I go here and press E, it says hello at the top left of the screen, as you can see. So everything is going ahead and working. So now in our interact, we need to make sure that we send the player. So for this, begin play, let's get the owner of this component and cast to our CBP sandbox character. Once again, it's sandbox character, which is the parent, right? We name this to character BP as a variable, and now we can, you know, just send it as a variable over here, and boom. All right, so now in here it's time to make it move. So we're gonna do a very interesting thing. First of all, let's get this and say attach actor to actor, and the parent will be this. And I set this to be on snap to target, snap to target, and snap to target. And now if I go to the vehicle and press E, boom, I'm inside of it, as you can see. So now we just need to make sure that our camera will not, you know, be in the middle of everything, and we can actually like drive it. So let's open up the drivable vehicle, and on the mesh, scroll down until we see camera and set this to ignore. And now you will see that when we enter the vehicle, the camera stays the same. Now we need to go ahead and make sure that the vehicle will not like collide with the player. So let's go ahead and get the player and set the collision to be set actor enable condition and disable this, okay? And on top of that, we also need to get this and set the actor to be hidden in game and put this to true so we cannot see it. And now we go here, as you can see, boom, we are inside of the vehicle. So first of all, we need to make sure the camera is a bit more, you know, far away. So back in our drivable vehicle, let's get the player and say get the camera style. Set the camera style, and the camera style will be, as you can see, far. And now if we go here, the camera is far away, which is super cool, as you can see, right? It's literally perfect. And now we just need to make sure that we can go ahead and drive this vehicle. So if we open up this, you can see there's no logic on the event graph apart from our event drive. But if we go up here into the parent class and we open this up, this is where we have all of the logic. So what we're going to do is essentially create custom events and call them individually. So over here, create a new custom event, and this will be, you know, throttle, and this will require an action value. So drag this into here, and yeah, I can only plug once. There we go. And yeah, that's perfect. And plug this into here. Then for the steering, create another custom event. Steering. Hold control, drag this here, connect this. Then for the brake and so on, we can leave it like this. Okay, so let's start with the throttle and the steering. Okay, and simply we're gonna go ahead and open up our CBP sandbox character. Okay, and let's add a variable which is in vehicle. Okay, and let's make sure it's a question mark with a boolean. Okay, therefore now when we go ahead and move, we can go ahead and make sure that our car will move. So on top of that, we're gonna need a car reference. So the vehicle actor, and this will be a sports car. Well, actually the drivable vehicle, sorry, object reference. And now we can simply, actually we can delete the boolean, because we can simply get this and check if, you know, if it's active, right? So we're gonna get this, right click, and if it's valid, and I say what was the throttle, right? And there we go. And then for the throttle value, it will simply be this this event. So I'm not sure which one of these will be. Let's plug in the X. And now we need to simply go to the drivable vehicle, and on the player set the vehicle actor to be self. And now if we go here, you can see that we can move. There we go. And we're driving, but it's the other way around. So in our sandbox character, it has to be the Y instead of the X. And now, yes, as you can see, I can drive, but we also need to do it for the Y. So what I'm thinking is that we can add these two values together. So let's get this and get this, and this will be the other value. And boom. Wow. Okay, actually, yeah, that will not work. Okay, let's do it on Y for now, and we'll create another one in a second. But let's also do the steering. Okay, so let's copy this node over here. Just expand this too, and also let me reorganize this. There you go. And for the steering, okay, which I believe, yeah, it simply needs to be on also move. Actually, so if we go ahead and say, okay, steering, and we plug in the X this time, we should be able, where is it here, to move. There we go. So now we can turn the car and everything, and it's working just fine, as you can see, which is super cool. So now we just need to make sure that we can hop off the car, and also, yeah, just hop off the car. So for this, we're gonna make sure that we go into the drivable vehicle and add a boolean, which is driving. And now let's go ahead and implement. So drag this and just ask if we are not driving, so not boolean. Okay, and this will be untrue. But if we are driving, I also need to set this to over here to true. You will set driving to false, and then we need to detach this from the player, right? So it has to be attach actor. Actually, this should be a detach, right? Yeah. So there you go. We have a detach from actor, which is super cool. I'm gonna keep the position relative. And then we need to make sure that we enable the collision, and the camera is back to normal. So let's put this like this. So set actor enable, boom, hidden in game, disable, this back to close, and then also the vehicle actor will be empty. So now let's get this and plug this to here, to here, to here, and this to the target, okay? And there we go. So if I go here, I can drive, and I press E again, I hop off the car. So everything is going ahead and working for our car, which is super cool. And the police is chasing me, as you can see. So that's the yeah, so that's basically the advantage, okay, of making, okay, so yeah, so actually the player did not move, but you can see the cop was chasing me. That's the advantage of having the player inside of the car still, you know. And it's actually we're using a pretty innovative approach, which is managing the controls from the player. Therefore we have actually more flexibility, okay, and it will work better for multiplayer and things like that. All right, so back over here, let's make sure to put a kit weld, and now in theory this should go ahead and make sure to work. So for example, I'm gonna go over here, right? I just love driving. Okay, I guess around here, right? And if I hop off the car, oh, okay. So we need to actually create a little position, which is gonna be an arrow. It's gonna be the pause, and I'm gonna put it right next to here so we can hop off the car, right? So let's go ahead and get this, and simply get the player and set the actor location. And this will be the pause get world location, and that's it. So now, yes, if I go into the car, drive a bit, and exit, there we go, we are in the position that we want. And for this masterclass, I'm gonna do one last thing, which is to make sure that when I'm in the city and I shoot, the surrounding NPCs will get a bit scared. So for this, let's go ahead and make sure to open up the shooter component, which is gonna be under weapons. Here it is. And right when I shoot, I'm gonna add a sequence over here and do a sphere trace for objects, okay? And get the surrounding ones and simply just, you know, scare them. So let's get the owner and simply get the location, the actor location. And this will be the same for start and end. The radius is gonna be like 2000. And then for the object types, it's gonna be make array. And I'm gonna detect the pawns. And then I set this to duration so we can see it. And if we hit something, we need to make sure that we interact with the NPCs. So let's go ahead and blueprints and create a new blueprint interface. This will be VPI NPC. And this will be something as scare them, scare. And then we can simply just make sure to only do this if they have this NPC interface. And then we can simply get this and do the scare message. Cool. So now we go to our NPC, which it is, I'm actually not sure where we had it. I'm actually not sure. Let me search for NPC. Oh yes, we had it under the NPCs folder. So if I go to class settings and add the BPI NPC, I can add the scare, and I can simply say, okay, play montage, and I want to play a specific montage over here. But we need to create an animation blueprint because, you know, this looping animation will not work. And wait, oh, we actually have a whole animation blueprint. Great, so let's open this up and let's simply make sure that in the name graph we have a default slot, which is the slot that animation blueprints play. And that's it. There we go. So now we need to make sure that we have a scare animation. So if we go back up into, where is it? You know, characters, and we go into, actually let's go into the NPCs folder. And right over here, I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link in the description to download an animation. So simply go ahead and drag it into the content browser and make sure that the skeleton is the UFN, okay, which is this one. And that's it. Click on import. Now we need to convert this to the other skeleton, but I think it should be fine. Not gonna lie, I think it should be fine. So let's create an anime montage from this, and as you can see, it's a cool little animation when they get scared, when they shoot. So we can just plug this, you know, scared, and that's it. And make sure to get the mass AI agent, and there should be something about stop movement. Yeah, stop active movement, and there we go. And I think there should be an enable or movement, which should be, yeah, I think that's it. Let's just call the active. And it's gonna be movement. Yeah, well, actually, I think it's gonna continue to work here. So the mass AI should continue to work. Okay. So with that said, let me go to the other level and do this. All right. So now we're here. If I shoot, you can see that there's a surrounding sphere, but they do not go ahead and react in the way that I want. They simply don't go ahead and just kind of do the. Oh, okay, so one did it. So it's really that it's only picking one at a time. You know what's this issue? It's basically that in the shooter we need to use a multi-sphere trace for objects. This will make sure that it will impact on many civilians, not only one. And of course, for this system, we need that. So let's make sure that everything is on this one. This set as 2000, and the distance you can see was pretty good. I'm gonna leave it like this. Alright, and then I can delete this node, put this here, put this back to for duration, so I can actually, well, we're gonna leave it like this. And then we just need to make sure that this is a for each loop, and we use it here. Alright, so now yes, if we go ahead and test this out, you will see how multiple civilians will go ahead and kind of be scared because only it was happening for one of them. Okay, because we were using a single sphere trace, but now it's gonna hit multiple, you know, civilians at once. This is what we need to do. Okay, so if I go ahead and shoot, boom, they go ahead and do this thing. Now they, as you can see, they're not stopped from moving. They're still moving, and they also kind of reacted a bit too slow. I want to make it a bit faster. So first of all, in the NPCs, let's just make sure that the montage is set to around 1.5. And then on top of that, I'm gonna go to the NPC and change this to be to disable movement. And this should be working. Alright, so let's test this one more time. And as you can see, it's pretty cool to see the civilians. Now, of course, you get like sounds and so on of them screaming. There we go, that's perfect. Now they stop. It's perfect. Now we need to make sure that they will only do it once. As you can see, I shoot it again and they got up and play the montage again. It's just a little thing. We just need to make sure that this is set as a do once. But when this is completed, they can go ahead and do it again. And that's it, we have it all. And that's it, guys. You now have a complete GTA game. Now, of course, GTA games have many more mechanics, but this covered the main mechanics and the concept and vibe of a GTA game, which is the most important one, such as, you know, a whole locomotion, shooting system, wanted, police AI, civilians, a city, cars, traffic cars, and all that stuff, you know? So from here you can really expand it and build a whole game. Remember, they can download the whole project with a link in the description. Now have in mind that of course I cannot put paid assets, like for example the CD plugin, but you have all the code and the essential stuff, which is the main thing. If you found the video helpful, I would really appreciate it. You can like the video and subscribe to my channel. This took some time and effort to make. With that said, join my Discord server. Now yes, with all that said, bye bye.